2018 Town Board Work Session at 5:37 p.m. Of course, the goal of this work session is to have the Town Board receive information on topics of town business from town manager, town attorney, and various other folks that we have gathered this evening. Members of the public in attendance, don't see anybody, but in case somebody comes, they're asked to be recognized before participating in any discussions. 3 items this evening, and the first one, Ms. Cheryl Trent is going to do a follow-up with our strategic plan. So, Ms. Trent.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, board members. I'm glad to be back. Hi, everybody behind me. As you know, as a team, you've been working on strategic plans for many years now in the town of Windsor. So this is the latest update to your strategic plan. We have very limited time tonight and some really important topics that are coming right after me. So I'm going to be, for me, unusually brief. We won't be able to get into much detail, but certainly one of the things that I'm going to leave you with is the idea that I would ask that you place this plan for adoption at a meeting in September so that the board formally adopts your strategic plan, makes it part of your formal record. And if you have any really detailed questions in between now and then, I just ask that you let Shane Hale, your manager, know, or let me know so that we can address those and go with them through you at some detail if you want to meet. So having said that, what I want to cover with you are a few of the highlights of your strategic plan. As you know, you have a long-range strategic plan. This one is not just for 5 years, which it implies by the 2018 to 2023, but there are clearly some projects on here that are going to take the town of Windsor 20, 25, and even 30 years into the future. Because as a town board, you're really looking at the long-term future of the entire community. Where to place things, where traffic goes, where parks and trails go, where recreation go, where facilities go, and how your town is going to grow over that same period of time. So we really asked 3 questions of strategic planning. Where are we right now? Because it's like a roadmap. If you don't know where you're starting, you don't really know where you're going to need to do in between now and where you're going. The second one is where, in fact, is it you want to go? Where do you want to be? And that's more of your vision that you talk to your community about as well. And then the real details are in the how are we going to get there? What are we going to do to go from where we are now today to where we want to be in the future? So the process that we used, as you know, but I want to remind you, is that you had a number of master plans, a number of documents, a number of planning items, a lot of strategic planning you had already done. Your staff is, of course, incredibly familiar with those. We use those as part of this process to build that information basis, to make sure, number one, that we didn't conflict with any of your existing plans, and number 2, we took into account all of those planning efforts and all the work that you'd already done. The team as a staff met to talk about those plans and to talk about what they needed to do as a team to make sure they implemented the goals and the vision of the board and the community. And then the board themselves met as a team to go over some of those same details. What's the vision for the town? Those are the things that we talked about. We then got together as a staff and a board team and sat around for an entire day and talked about those very things. What is the vision for the town of Windsor? What does that look like? How do all these plans come into play? And what are the most important priorities for this board to accomplish? And within those priorities, we broke that down a little bit as well. We broke that down into areas of focus. And that's what I want to cover with you tonight, as well as the idea that you then took those ideas back into the community and you said in your community meeting, which I guess close to 100 people attended. Congratulations, that's a great turnout. And in that meeting you said, what do you think we should be doing in these areas? How do you feel about parks and trails and traffic and infrastructure in the downtown and retail? Where do you think we should be headed as a town? You followed that up with a survey to your community, and now tonight you have all of those results. And I want to go into some detail on the community survey, which you have in front of you as well, and talk a little bit about that and get some ideas for y'all. So tonight we're at that green stage of just this big picture overview, and then finally in September, it's my goal to ask you to actually formally adopt your strategic plan moving forward. And of course, that's not the end of it, because you then have to use the strategic plan and work with it. This isn't a static document that should just sit there. It should be an active document where you as a board are consistently taking a look at it, making sure it really does reflect your priorities and your goals and the vision of the community. And the staff is actively working on it in that how do we get there phase. So they're doing the details. How are we going to get this? Who do we need to meet with? What kind of budget work do we need to do? What kind of recommendations do we need to bring back to the board? So they're doing all the detail work in between. So I want to cover your mission and your vision, not so much for you, but just as a basis for where we are. The mission, of course, of the town is really straightforward. It just describes what you actually do. The town of Windsor promotes community and hometown pride through sustainable, excellent, and equitable delivery of services in a fiscally responsible manner. If someone asked what you did, this is extremely plain and clear. And it talks a lot about your values in here, that you're fiscally responsible, that you're very interested in customer service, the excellent and equitable delivery, and that you really value the feel that Windsor has to it, which we talked a lot about, this hometown, this small town feel. The vision is this, where do we want to be? It's a bigger picture vision. And this is the one that you branched out to your community and asked them for some feedback as well. Windsor is the hub of northern Colorado, a safe, unique, and special town that offers diverse cultural and recreation opportunities. Windsor is recognized as a regional leader that demonstrates fiscal responsibility, environmental stewardship, and strategic excellence. A town that thinks big and embraces its hometown pride. So this is very aspirational. Someone might look at this and say to you, well, I don't know that we actually really do this. And you might say, well, not yet, but we're sure as heck working on it, and this is how we're working on it, because we have priorities and areas of focus, and these are the things that we're doing. Your visions should sort of lead you to the future. It's kind of your guiding star or your beacon. As you remember, we brought in Karina when we were talking, and she did this sketch, and your community has seen this sketch as well. And this sketch is just a really visual demonstration of all those things that are incorporated in your vision, your mission, and your priorities. You can see there's a safe issue up there. The arts and culture were mentioned, the vibrant downtown restaurants, economic sustainability, the lake and open space, your trails, your infrastructure, your transportation. And she had there's a great beer down there too, by the way. You guys do have great beer in town, so we didn't want to forget that. So yes, it's a little bit lighthearted, but it's also a really great way to communicate what your vision is. And with this vision, you'll see the balloons, you'll see the pelicans, all the things that sort of make Windsor unique and special, and it still have that hometown feel are reflected here. And we intend to use this graphic, and you probably saw it laminated at your community meeting. You'll also see it in some of the documents that are in your packet tonight that we created for you to share on your website and as handouts to explain what your vision is. You then went to your community meeting and you asked your community exactly what is important to you. What's your vision of the future look like? What does it look like in these various areas that we're talking about? And one of the things I know you wanted to be sure of, and so I paid very close attention in all those survey results, was if the direction that you were headed in as a board, that you had bounced off of your staff and you and your staff had talked about, is that truly reflective of what the community wants to see as well? And I must say, in reading all of those comments, yes, I would completely say that you had a very good grasp of what your community wanted and needed. There were some details in there that we might not have covered in great detail in our meetings, but the vision was there, the main priorities were there, and the main areas of focus were there. I'm going to come back. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Is the font size indicative of the number of times that comment was made?
Yes, this is what's called a word cloud, and so the larger words are typically the words that were repeated the most. And unfortunately, usually in word clouds, you can't write two words with a space, otherwise the two words show up separately. That's why the word bringing kind of showed up separately, even though it doesn't make much sense there, right? So, yeah, thank you for asking. So your priorities, when we talked about it, were economic sustainability and vibrancy. And priorities, by the way, I should say, are the things that you're going to focus your time and attention on. If someone or something comes up and says to you, this is a great grant, this is a great program, this is a great thing to do, you are going to ask yourself, does it fit into my vision and mission? And as we pointed out, oftentimes, yes, absolutely. It'll fit into your vision and mission. Will it make you safer? Will it make you more hometown? Will it help your traffic? Usually it'll fit into one of those. If it doesn't fit into one of your priorities, though, that's where you have the opportunity to say, is this something we should really focus our time and energy on? Because if it doesn't fit into economic sustainability and vibrancy, infrastructure, quality of life, safety, or a small town feel, it might be that it's not the right thing for you to spend your time, your effort, and your money on. It is worth your time to review these at least once a year or every 2 years in a very deep dive fashion, like we did just this year, because those priorities could change over time. Something could dramatically happen. So keep that in the back of your mind. Again, your plan isn't static, it's a living document. Then I want to talk a little bit about what I would call your areas of focus. And what we created was 2 documents for you. One is a longer document, it's about 8 pages, and one is just a short 2-sided brochure. Both intended to convey what your strategic plan is. The longer one obviously has more detail. So underneath those priorities, there are what we called areas of focus, and they're reflected in some of the structures and the drawings that we did for you as well. So for example, one of your areas of focus was roads and traffic. And as you can see from your priorities, roads and traffic could be infrastructure, it could solve a safety problem, it could actually contribute to a small town feel, depending on how you design your road structure. So your areas of focus might touch on multiple priorities. And then underneath those areas of focus, we talked about these bigger picture goals. And again, there's not a lot of detail in these goals, and that's on purpose, because we want your staff to go back, take a look, and use those existing plans and documents and all that work you've done to make recommendations to you on how to achieve your goals. You then give your direction back to your staff, and hopefully your community is watching and paying attention, and they can also give you feedback on whether or not they think we're headed in the right direction. So for example, in that document, some of the goals under roads and traffic are that partnership with CDOT on 392 and 257, the multimodal transportation plan. So you'll see those goals, but you will not see details in this level of document. What the staff has is a full-blown implementation plan, and it captures everything that we talked about in great detail. And remember, I said whether it's a good idea or not a good idea, it goes on the plan so that the staff has a chance to see if it's a good idea, come back to you and say, hey, we took a look at this, and this is the research that we did, and this is the recommendation that we'd like to make to you. And they can come back with, I'd loosely call it analysis, as we termed, to do some work on that for you and come back with more detail. I usually recommend about every 90 days the staff has a full-blown kind of review for themselves of all those details to say, how did we do? Did we get done what we thought we were going to do? Are we still going in the right direction? What else do we need to do in the next quarter? And what do we need to do in the next quarter? So I know the staff has a plan. Once you adopt your strategic plan, they have a plan in place to come report to you on a regular basis. So the next area of focus, we use these pictures to sort of represent. The first one was roads and traffic. The second one was water. For example, some of the goals there, you're already well aware of them, to update your water plan. I believe you've already accomplished one of those goals, which was to hire a water resources manager. So check mark, congratulations. Talking about fee structures and researching plants and things of that nature. Those are all big picture goals, and the details fill in the blanks there. Another area of focus was your trails and your open space, and that's something I know that's very near and dear to this community's heart, and there was a lot of community feedback about trails and open space, what that looks like, what that feels like, where those trails might be, what that connectivity looks like. So the detailed trails and open space plan, ditch easements, codes, looking at constructing trails, all of those things are part of your goal package. The next picture there represents your downtown. A large part of what makes you unique and special and makes you feel like a hometown in a small town is your downtown. And how do we deal with that in terms of helping assist the downtown? How we can expand that downtown both physically and how we can expand it in terms of helping our businesses grow and prosper. All of those were goals of yours, including keeping some walkability and the traffic issues that affect you downtown right now. That was a big topic of the community meetings that you had, and also some of the survey feedback was, how do we deal with that traffic downtown? Is there a way to route it around downtown, and if so, what does that look like? And I was having a conversation earlier, and you know this already, but some of these things in the strategic plan that you're going to do, you're not going to be able to please everybody. Not everybody on the board, certainly not everybody on staff, and certainly not everyone in the community. And I think traffic and downtowns are always going to be, parking, all of those are going to be those kind of topics that are going to require a lot of discussion and detail. And then finally, facilities. this is a growing area. We all know that this side of Colorado is going to grow exponentially over the next 15 to 20 to 30 years. How do we do that in terms of your facilities? So facilities in terms of town hall, facilities in terms of all of the offerings that you have as a town where your citizens use to recreate, to get police resources, all of those things fall into that facilities. So that is a quick overview of the plan document. The brochure is even shorter, and it's a nice, easy way to maybe give a handout and show somebody in the big picture, which they can come back for more detail. And we'll also create a super short, maybe 2.5 or 3 minute YouTube length type video that goes into some of this as well. Because some of our strengths involve different types of communications, so we all learn differently too. This is not enough detail for David. It's probably way too much detail for me. The video would probably work fine for me. So this is Karina's, this was Karina's sort of visual. Some people work very visually, so this is going to work really well for those of us that work visually. It's not going to work so well for people that like numbers and things that add up. So this is also part of that laminated document that we shared with your community, and this shows up in your documents as well. So there you can see your sort of 5 areas of focus: water, trails and open space, roads and traffic, the downtown, and your facilities. And underneath those, she tried to capture those main goals in a way that made the most sense. Now, she put up 2 things here, sort of short-term and long-term. There are some things that you, like I mentioned, you've already accomplished, hiring a water resources manager. Very short-term things. There are some very, very long-term things you have here too. So keep in mind, one of the things about the implementation document your staff works with is that's going to keep them on track, and that will also allow you a way to communicate back and forth with your staff about things that you'd like to see done in more detail, and a way to communicate back to your constituents as well, your citizens and residents here, about how you're doing business. So your next steps are really pretty simple. Hopefully you feel comfortable adopting the plan in September. And again, I stand ready to answer any questions for a few minutes tonight and any time between now and then. Communicate this plan out in any way you like, your website, printing documents, using the video, and then a regular, thorough approach to the plan to make sure you're on top of it and that it works for you and you're using it and adapting it in a way that makes sense. So I wanted to thank you for the chance to work with you. You guys were so much fun. And I think you've got a really great document here, a nice basis on to build for the future. Can I answer any questions right now?
Questions?
What?
Well,
A
you'd
question?
be disappointed if I didn't have.
Actually, yes.
And I guess it's kind of maybe a question for both of you, and only again because I'm sort of new to the process. Because you talk about goals a lot, and I appreciate that there's a high level goal, and then the staff is going to have probably a much more detailed working set of goals. And I flash back to corporate America, and it was always SMART goals.
Correct.
By X date, I will do some measurable thing. And is that something we would then expect to see as a subset of each of these higher level goals?
Yes, the action plan, the implementation matrix is designed to be used in just that way.
Yeah.
So if you think about a funnel, but the funnel works left to right. So at the top of the funnel is your vision and your mission, and then you get your priorities, your areas of focus, your goals, and then it starts to get detailed. What am I going to do? By when am I going to do it? Who is it that's going to do it, specifically by name? And then as you move forward and develop this even further, you can start talking about what are the outcomes intended to be? How am I going to measure that? Is there a way to do a return on investment? And usually that happens over the course of time as you get more and more information about that particular area. You can add on more information. But yes, the detail about dates, specific dates, is included in that.
We also will, I think maybe somebody on our communication side, but we previously have had like a very simple brochure or a rack card that we all will have that we can carry, with us or take when we're having your listening sessions. That is a simple kind of breakout of what we're doing, what the strategic plan is too.
Thank you.
Okay? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me make way for the capital plan.
Okay, we might need, you didn't bring rabbit and squirrel, if ever we needed
Yeah.
it in this next topic. I feel like we might be going down a lot of holes tonight. Sorry, Dean. Okay, so now we have Dean up, Mr. Moyer with capital improvement project update.
Yes, well, I gotta change out my, thumb drive here, but before I get too far and it gets late and we all get tired, I wanted to say thank you to everyone here that worked on this project, on the capital improvement plan. This is a result of a lot of work by a lot of people, and probably none more than Ms. Vicki Miller. I think you all know her. And I wrote in my update this past week that we learned last week we had won the GFOA budget award again. So thank you all for your help on that. And like you said, mostly Vicki for her work.
Let's give her a.
Okay, so like I said, there was an awful lot of information in your packet. What we tried to give you what you and the people asked for. It was kind of a fortuitous that we did the strategic plan tonight as well, because a lot of the projects we're going to talk about are related to the goals of the strategic plan. So how we'll do this tonight is I'll be your host here, or MC, and I'll first go through our revenue estimates, and then talk about the IT specific projects we have in here. Then you can see we have a lot of department heads and project managers here. We'll take turns discussing their specific projects, and then at the end, I'll speak again and summarize the totals and that type of thing. So it's a lot of information. I'd like to keep it, I'll try my best to keep it moving. I just kind of discussed that. So anyway, sources of funds in this project. I won't read them all to you. I mean, you can read as well as I can, but what I wanted to point out was in that list, notice that we do not have property tax in there. We do not use property tax for our capital improvement projects. Property tax is strictly for general fund operations. So our largest source of revenue is sales tax. And what we've done on this is we take a 3-year average, 2018 projected and 2017 and 2016 actuals. You can see there that on the sales tax portion of it, that's been increasing pretty steadily the last few years. The construction use tax has been a little more consistent, 4.1 in 16, about 4.0 in 2017. So these numbers up here, we have the 3-year average of the sales tax, 12.1 million, and the construction use tax, we have roughly at 4 million, almost 4.1. I wanted to talk a little bit about, this is the newest part of our sales tax, the 0.75 that we approved in 2015. We started collecting this in January of 2015. This was the expansion, to be used for the expansion of the rec center, which it was. We have the retail sales tax and the construction use tax there. Those together about 3.1 million. Our debt service payments in 2019 are that 1.3, leaving available for operation and maintenance the 1.7. Another part of that ballot question was that when the debt was repaid, part of that tax would go away. As I mentioned, we started collecting this in January of 2015. At the end of, and then we started collecting it, we made some payments on bonds and notes. We also had to obviously run the building, so we spent some money on O&M. So at the end of July here, 2018, that debt service reserve is 3.9 million. The O&M reserve is 2.5. Now, 3.9 is a pretty good number, but keep in mind, we have a note payment here in December of 2018 of 1.2 million, but we also will be collecting tax between now and then. So I estimate the end of 2018 that the debt service reserve will be at roughly 3.5 million. As far as when we can pay those bonds off, the language in the last refinancing said we could do it anytime after December 1st, 2020. So, and we can do chunks of it. We don't have to have all of it. We can do chunks of it. So we got a good head start on that payoff reserve. Also, it's no secret we have a lot of building permits. And at the time of the building permit, we collect a number of impact fees that we use in this plan. We have traffic impact fees, park and trail development fees, and I wanted to point out that the park fees are not paid by commercial development, strictly residential. Multifamily and single family pay it, but commercial does not. We also collect utility impact fees. This is, of course, this has a bit of a curve to it as well. We do not we collect the drainage investment fees on every property, and regardless of where the property is located. The water and sewer is a little more convoluted because we do not serve every home in town with water and sewer. So we don't collect that tap fee on all of the permits. Some of the other items that, and again, I won't read it to you, but the severance taxes related to oil and gas, when I checked, they give us a number for that here in August that we can use for the next year's budget. I looked this morning, if it was published, it has not been published yet, but we will know that by the end of August. We touched on the strategic plan. We addressed those things in this plan. We did have some projects here in 2018 that are planned for 2018, I should say, that we didn't get finished. We now pushed them into 2019. Again, you're all familiar with the mill and the parking in front of it. We had a lot of money for Diamond Valley ball fields. This should say Village East Park, and of course trails and the sewer interceptor project, which as a, it's okay to say this, right? The sewer project.
Well, I don't know what you're saying.
No.
Oh, yeah, just,
It's okay.
yeah, so, well, we haven't completed that yet, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Anyway, this list is a list of our biggest projects over $100,000. We have some others that are less than 100,000, but as you can see here, between here and the next page, we have quite a bit planned for next year. It used to be all of this list fit on one page, with just the first couple being $1 million or more, but as we grow, as Cheryl alluded to, we get bigger and there's more projects to be done. We have a couple that are driven by specific development projects. These are oversizing agreements that we have in the CIP. What happens there is the builder, just what it says, oversizes something on our behalf and we pay them for it. We touched on the mill. That is from last year's budget. The I-25 widening project with our neighbors, this is the third year, or it will be the third year, that we agreed to contribute $1 million to that project, payable that every 3 years. I mean, once a year for 3 years. And entryway signs to promote community events. Now, as far as IT, we have some things planned for next year as well. First, I'll talk about things that we got done this year. You can see on the east side of the building here, it's not done yet, but it will be by the end of the year. We are gonna put a generator out there. The main server room is right there where that hole comes into the building. Currently, we have a battery pack on the server stack. That'll go for about an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours should the power go out. I've been working on this generator project for a couple of years, and we finally got it going this year. We also did an IT assessment of our network system, replaced the firewall, and also we started a project. AVL stands for Automated Vehicle Locator. What that is a GIS-related thing. It's a transmitter that we put on the snow plows. You know, we get questions about, you never plow my street. Well, this will keep track of where the plows go, and we can say, yes, in fact, we did plow your street. So this is where I may have to recruit some help from Corinne on these, but these are projects we are planning for next year. The EOC and data center upgrade, that has to do with the server room that I mentioned a little bit ago. We're gonna upgrade those servers in there. They're quite old, and they're getting to the end of the life, so we're replacing the servers there. We're also replacing the server, we have a server room over at the police department. So we're gonna replace those as well, so should the power go down there or here, the police department can still keep running at full blast. The fiber expansion, the good news on this number here, the 60, was designed, we arrived at that number thinking we were gonna have to pull cable from our closest point over to the Art and Heritage Center. It turns out we can do a wireless connection from the top of this building over to the Art and Heritage Center, which will be cheaper than the $60,000. The security and access control involves cameras and access control pads on our buildings. IT offsite storage, that is what it says. We're gonna have a backup offsite, not in one of our buildings, in a site that should we have a disaster here, we can recover the information from another site. The cemetery IT upgrade, that sounds a little bit funny, but what it is we have a software now that the company is no longer going to support. So we're going to get a new cemetery program to keep track of the cemetery, the burial plots, that kind of thing. We have not decided on the name of it yet, but we are planning for that for next year. The last one here, smart cards. I'll use a visual aid here. What we have now is we have these door fobs to get in the door outside. We have our ID cards, and then when we get in our office, we have to log on to our computer with a password and user ID. What we're planning to do here is combine all that stuff into one card, where you wave it at the door, it lets you in. You sit at your computer, put it in front of the computer, it'll log you in without a need for passwords. So that's why we have money in there for that.
Well, and I don't think that's exactly right. I think that it's added in the computer. I think you have to do that at your password. Isn't that right, Corinne? I thought we had 2 layers. Let's probably more detailed.
You have a PIN.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a way to enhance security in multiple ways. To be able to easily get rid of a card if somebody leaves and is no longer working for the county, and helps us control access better.
That is Corinne, our IT manager. So, moving along,
Well, I would just ask, does anybody have any questions right now? Yeah, on anything that you said? Yes, sir.
Well, going off what we were just talking about, is CIRSA, is that one of the recommendations that CIRSA made as far as security and stuff, or is that something completely separate? CIRSA had made some recommendations, and I don't remember how long ago it was, on different things that we could do to make town hall more secure and stuff like that. I just don't know if that
yeah, that
was our resolution to that, or if that was a CIRSA recommended thing, or.
Right,
Let me go back here.
There's a couple that I know about. One was access control, and another is incident response. So those are two things that we're trying to address for next year.
Right, yeah, and Terry is also, taking the lead on doing a security assessment of town hall, which I think is a little bit more on the CIRSA side. So this is just, you know, is we have things like, CDOT's information, you know, is held hostage, you know, and Atlanta's information. And when we hear these municipalities and these big state agencies getting this ransomware, wanting Bitcoin, you know, locking a municipality out, I think our IT staff is really looking and saying, geez, this could happen to anybody. This could happen to Windsor. If it happens to the city of Atlanta, it could happen here. So I think just being smart and realizing that so much of our work and our data and people's information they trust us with is on these computer systems, and so we need to be smarter about how we handle it. So I think a lot of it too is just Corinne and her leadership and just working with her staff and just thinking, how can we keep this stuff safe? So there's like the offsite storage. I mean, that's just, you know, it's smart to not have all your stuff in the same building. You know, to back it up offsite, it's just a good practice that we don't currently follow. So, yeah, is that, yep, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Moore? Sorry, Mayor?
I think,
I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Ken, go ahead.
I read in our weekly update a week or so ago that we have a number of computers that are outdated. Is that a significant capital expense? we need to
Yeah,
look
that's
at?
part of this data center upgrade.
Okay,
Uh,
gotcha.
That's the servers in the basement they're
Not
quite
just the
old.
servers, but also, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So, yeah, we inherited those after the DNC.
Yes.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah, Mr. Moore, along with this slide deck, you of course sent us a lot of other information to
Yes.
look at. And I'm trying to recall, since you kind of walked through revenue sources and now we're going through projects and expenses, but is there a single spreadsheet that shows by year the total revenue available and how that is going to be spent in a given year?
Yes, in fact, I have here to hand out,
Okay.
and I can give it to you now if you like.
No, that's fine.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Anyone else? Well, thank you. So next, I will turn it over to Mr. Ballstedt from the Planning Department, if he would be so kind.
Is there another slide, or is it just this slide? Thank you, Town Board. The big item that planning has added to this year's CIP is a multimodal transportation plan. You'll recall that last year we completed the roadway improvement plan that was essentially our road network and automobile transportation. And the idea of the multimodal transportation plan, it will look at it'll build on that effort and look at all modes of transportation, whether it's pedestrians, bikes, transit, and other modes of transportation. This plan will provide staff with additional direction regarding creation of action steps that will allow us to implement our Trails Master Plan and the Complete Streets Policy, as well as include a robust community outreach element. We've spoken with one of our consulting teams that's done a few projects in Windsor to get an idea on where this budget number should be. And almost a good portion of that, almost half of that number, would be for the outreach aspect of that. They go out to examples that we've looked at from across the Front Range include outreach at the rec center or outreach at the concerts in the park and those types of things to really generate a discussion or a dialogue with the community. And that will also allow town board to have that input when they're prioritizing different transportation-related projects. So both the comprehensive plan and the Parks Master Plan recommend in numerous places that the town prepare a multimodal transportation plan, and this is just that next step to.
And I would just add, this was also identified by the board in your strategic plan as something you wanted to do.
Correct.
And I think the smart money to spend here, you know, you have the engineering side of the traffic counts, and that matters. But I think too, the community engagement piece is really important. You know, as we get people and we're filming traffic, we're saying, geez, County Road 13, well, look, you know, we've got rain dance up here, we got this subdivision, and, you know, what happens here? I think it's really important to engage the public on this. So when the board is taking kind of the finite resource of your capital planning money, and we're making these long-term investments in roads, we really have a plan that's done the engagement piece as well, and the engineering, I think it's gonna come into place a lot easier for the board and for staff once we have this plan in place. So.
What do you think the odds are that this can solve our overall traffic issues?
0.
Unless we have, you know, several $100 million in the bank
That's
to
right.
improve the roads, correct?
That's right. I think it's gonna help us focus the resources that we have into some key areas, but I don't think it's gonna be a silver bullet for us, because as you said, Dr. Jones, you know, it's gonna be, we'll know what we need to fix, and then geez, where's the $150 million to do it? So, it's not gonna be the panacea fix at all.
I'll defer to Mr. Baker.
Thank you. I think we've done a roadway improvement plan previously. Does this complement? Is there duplication here? How do these work together?
This is building on the roadway improvement plan. The roadway improvement plan, ideally, we would have probably done more of a multimodal plan at that time. However, there was a need to update our road impact fees, which are directly related to the roadway improvement plan. So we did that separately to get it done, and so this will build on that effort.
So they'll use information from that to work to build this.
Definitely, the automobile and the roadway network questions have largely been answered, so this will be concentrating on the other aspects primarily.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not a lot of money, so it's hard to get overly exercised about this, but I didn't realize there was a transportation improvement plan because I wasn't here, but I'm gonna want to see that.
Mhm.
Because when I think about this, it feels like this is a down-the-road nice to have perhaps, but it feels like we have some fairly critical issues in our core basic transportation with blind or blocked intersections, poor crosswalks, inadequate north, south, east, west flow, et cetera. I mean, it feels to me like those are priorities.
Right.
And it's hard for me to think that we would spend brain power or money on a multimodal plan without first addressing some of those. But that other plan may already.
So yeah, the roadway improvement plan that was adopted just last fall, it includes the list of roadway improvements that we need on our transportation network between now and 2040. And I think one of the examples that this plan will help, following the roadway improvement plan, we've had a couple of work sessions to discuss prioritization of those roadway improvements in the list of needs. And I think the board having that discussion without having the community input that this community outreach will generate, it's difficult to prioritize. At those work sessions, we've kind of anecdotally picked out projects based on where we think the major problems are. But then again, at the strategic plan meeting that we had at the rec center just a few weeks ago, there were a few projects that we hadn't even discussed at those work sessions, and I think having this community outreach will help the board to identify what their constituents really want to see as a priority.
Right, well, and I don't want to underscore the multimodal aspect of this either. You know, we also heard from a lot of people at community outreach about trails, about biking, about safety on the street. So I think it is a key piece, and I think it's a key piece now. And the two are not mutually exclusive. I mean, we're still working on, you know, getting the double turn lane on 7th Street. I mean, that's still in the budget. You know, there's still widening of 5th and 392. I mean, there's still things in here that are key actionable things that we know we see we need to address, but I think that these can run concurrently and for the betterment of the town.
I just don't want us to lose focus on the core basic transportation aspects, because as I said, I think we've got some pretty critical areas to address short-term pretty quickly, so. Okay, thanks.
Scott, will this include any type of design or engineering or cost estimates for connectivity? I mean, we've talked for years about connecting the West End neighborhoods to the Poudre Trail. We have other neighborhoods. I mean, I know I want to get into specifics of things we've talked about for years. At some point, we need an engineering design and cost estimates so we know what we're looking at on some of these things.
Yeah, it would be very broad brush if there were any type of cost estimates. There wouldn't be any design. There may be some conceptual connections and that type of thing, but I think they'd be looking at the projects that Eric and Wade have been working on already, and maybe what the next step would be in implementing those.
I understand that we need to take a broad view of things and have a lot of data and look at the big picture. But I guess I'll make an analogy. I have a broken window at home from the hail. I don't need to do a home inspection or complete home inspection to know that I need to repair the window. So I mean, I know we've had some things we've talked about in this community for years, and at some point we need to get to the next stage, at least an engineering design and cost estimates on some things where this may not be the right place, but I want to make that point. At some point, we've got to get to some specifics that we've talked about for years.
Right. I think similar to the road projects that Shane just mentioned,
Yeah.
the other trail projects and connections that are currently underway would not be slowed down by this effort. This
Right,
would just
understood.
build on those.
And we are like the Crossroads extension, you know, we're doing that design, I think, to 30%. We are looking these other things too, and these necessary things, and we are taking some things out to design. And so, yeah, I think that these are all, you know, the window's getting fixed. But we're also kind of preparing for a long winter as well.
That's good. Analogy on top of analogy.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, our next speaker talking about public safety is Chief Klimek.
Good evening. What I'm talking about here is a radio tower to be built out at County Road.
I'm sorry, Chief, and he forgot an introduction, Chief of the safest municipality in the state of Colorado.
That's it. All right. Thank you. That's kudos to the community. The community helped make that happen more than my brilliant looks.
Oh, I didn't say the good-looking.
Sorry. Anyway, radio coverage. Our radio service out west, in the west part of the community, is not very effective. It's really intermittent. Long story, it started years ago. Windsor and Weld County was served by the Colorado CCNC. They took care of all the radio coverage across the state. Several years ago, Weld County didn't feel it was being serviced adequately by that organization, so they started their own organization to take on radio coverage. Years ago, our towers were located on Horsetooth Reservoir and shot back in across this area, which gave us great coverage. We also didn't have anything west of 11th Street. So our radio, as we've expanded into Larimer County, our radio coverage out there has become noticeably insufficient in a number of areas. Weld County is aware of this, and approached Windsor Fire and Town of Windsor in reference to building a tower at the site of Highway 14 and County Road 15, an old AT&T tower site there. They had acquired in a purchase from another location. That tower site, if it's developed, will cover all of Windsor and eliminate all our shortages in basically the entire community. It'll also provide coverage for the fire department. The approach concept they want to do is they want to go in thirds with Windsor Fire District, Severance Fire District, and Windsor, Town of Windsor, and Will County itself, and build the tower site there at that location. The cost, which would be about $600,000, give or take, cost of tariffs going up. It'd be a 10-year project, service project for the county. We could pay it off one lump sum or over a 10-year period of time, including maintenance costs on the tower site of about $5,000 or $2,300, depending on what the contract is with Will County Wireless, who would service Motorola, which would service the contract out there. Once it's up and built, Will County will maintain all the replacement costs. So if something goes down, Will County will replace it, no cost back to the town or to the fire district. Their approach was to ask us to go in thirds. It was originally around $200,000, but with some of the unknowns, I asked for $250,000 to cover any variables in that process. Windsor Severance Fire District has recently advised that they are going to pony up their share of the third, and so it's a matter of reaching out now with Mike Wallace with Will County and with your approval, starting that process.
So we don't have Will County's approval to date, but
Yeah,
we
no,
know-
they're on board with it, but
We know they're, okay,
yes.
not officially though?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd have to go out and make sure and verify the bid they had on this project, so, and that'd be going back to Motorola.
Oh, I'm sorry, when you call it a 10-year project, it won't take 10 years to
No,
build?
it's a
will it?
10-year contract.
Okay, and then what, it's renewable every?
After the 10 years, then the county owns the whole thing, and they take care of it completely
Oh,
from there
and
on.
then we're
Any
just-
updates, and they anticipate, of course, with technology, that there'll be new updates that they'll be doing, but they'll take on all those costs.
Okay,
We would maintain the yearly maintenance fee for the site.
So Weld Severance Fire is paying $200-250 as well?
Well, whatever their third of it is, yes.
Okay. So it's Weld Severance Fire, and us?
Yes, 3 parties.
Chief, is this the tower that, because we've talked before about the problems you guys have as you approach I-25,
Yes.
as you get further out. So is Larimer County gonna benefit from this too, or?
No, they have their own towers and they work separately, so
Separate
Thermal County's
frequency?
not, neither is CSP. So it'd be Well County primarily. So Well County's in charge, is responsible for providing radio coverage for the Sheriff's Department, Well County Sheriff's Department. So any towers built out there is done in a joint partnership with the entities, fire districts, or law enforcement.
But it'll reach out there.
Oh, yes, it'll cover virtually the entire Northern Colorado region.
Okay.
So.
Does this include purchasing of the tower or something? You said Weld County.
Well
already did.
County's already purchased the property and they are doing upgrades
So
as we
this is
speak.
mostly just for equipment?
This is for basically the construction of the tower site itself, so the equipment going in, yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Moving along now into infrastructure, our Director of Engineering, Dennis Wagner, will take us through the next section.
Thank you, Board. Omar and Curtis are here also to help out. And just go through these. So the main 2018 projects that we've completed, or they're awfully close to being completed, just real quickly, water transmission line to North Weld County Water District. We built a 24-inch water transmission line starting at the Public Works Facility, northeast boundary, and went up County Road 15 to Road 72, and then it angled off to the northwest to a half mile, and then headed straight north to Harmony Road, where the Ridge at Harmony Road subdivision is bringing a 24-inch water main that is Northwell County Water District's main south to Harmony. And we'll meet there at Harmony, put a meter in, and that'll be a second source of water into Windsor from Northwell County Water District. We currently only have one master meter source from them, and that's on County Road 19 near County Road 70. So Omar's manager of that project, and we're just waiting pretty much now for the 24-inch line to come down through the Harmony, Ridge Harmony Road subdivision, cross Harmony Road, and connect into our line. The second one, street maintenance projects with water line replacements. Curtis is the manager of those, and those are wrapping up pretty well this year. So, and cemetery driveway and parking lots, Curtis is also managing that. And Curtis, you're in design right now, right? Do you have an anticipated advertisement date for that?
Just waiting for the design to finish up, which hopefully we're out big before September. So it should be soon.
The plan is to finish that. Hopefully you've seen the master plan and what that's going to look like at the cemetery. It's going to be a very nice looking improvement in the cemetery off of the west edge of the roundabout that was recently built. County Line Road erosion mitigation, it's Omar's project, and that's on the east side of County Line Road, starting just past the river, south of the river, and going up the hill. We used to have a lot of severe erosion in the borrow ditches. Erosion over the years had gone down several feet, and a lot of the storm drainage has now been put into pipes, and it's piped down the hill to reduce the amount that has to flow in the open borrow ditch. Unfortunately, the revegetation didn't get established as well as we like this year because it's been such a dry year. But I think we'll take another run at revegetating that next year, right?
Hopefully this fall, the seeding window this fall.
Cemetery storm line extension, that's Curtis's. As you can see, these guys have been doing a lot of work this year. That's a relatively small piece of storm pipe there at the corner of Highway 392 and 257 in the northeast corner of the cemetery. It was some work that needed to be done to take the water from that corner north along County Road 19 and get rid of it in the historical direction it's gone. Crossroads Boulevard extension design, that's Omar's, and that is a project that we are designing to 60% level. Future extension of Crossroads east of Highway 257 over to County Road 23, which goes through the south side of the Great Western Industrial Park. And we have, as far as finances on that, we have a DOLA grant. We also have contribution from Bro Company and a contribution from Well County. And that is slated to be finished this year also. Windsor Lake riprap, that project hasn't started. We're waiting for fall, winter, so the lake can be drawn down, and that's going to be some riprap on the west side of the lake to mitigate some bank erosion. Chimney Park Detention Pond Phase 2, that's just east of Chimney Park ball field, swimming pool area, property owned by the town. It's a next phase in a detention pond. There's one over there today that was built, it was the year of the tornado, 2008. This pond will be immediately south of that pond. Some additional stormwater detention, which was identified in our storm drainage master plan a few years ago. And it also needs to be finished in conjunction with the multifamily housing project that's going to start, has started construction just east of that on the vacant property that's been vacant for several years. And then, of course, the State Highway 257 roundabout's finished. So, any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Could you just elaborate a little bit about on the Crossroads expansion design from what point to what point? are you working on?
Where,
Yeah,
location, physical
yeah, where are you, what expansion zone are you looking at?
Okay, so Crossroads today comes out to Highway 257 at the traffic
Okay.
signal. This will be an extension to the east of that intersection.
Okay.
Cross the Poudre River, angle northeast a little bit. The plan is to match it up with the existing road that runs along the south side of the existing Kodak site, and then head straight east over to the industrial park, and then take a kind of a 45-degree angle to the northeast again till it hits County Road 23.
Okay. 223. Good, thank you.
So,
I had one other question. I know 392 going west is an issue, and we've got money in there for widening of 392 from 17th to County Road 5. Just a little bit more detail on how that's gonna help. With the bridge, the bridge is not gonna be replaced for a long time, so we still have a 2-lane bridge.
okay.
Just a little detail on how that's going to help.
I think we're gonna get into that with the 2019 projects, correct? So,
Yeah.
can we hold that till we get to that point,
Okay.
that question?
Okay. Is that it?
Go on.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
An aerial photo of the recently completed 257 roundabout. So I was talking a minute ago about the parking lot that Curtis is working on the design. That'll fit right in here, and so you'll come off of the highway and go into the parking lot, which will be kind of a loop design that loops around with kind of a landscaped courtyard, and I don't know what all goes in the center, but then you come back out, and you'll come out this leg of the roundabout. So, it'd be a great improvement for the cemetery, I think.
That was an issue. When's that gonna be completed, Dennis?
The parking lot,
The cemetery improvement?
if we can get that design finished and out to bid and constructed yet this year.
Yeah,
This year.
But,
This year?
I thought it was a 2018 project, wasn't it?
but,
Great.
you know,
Yeah, that was on last year. This year.
time's slipping away, I think. This right turn lane at the corner of 392, 257. Let me back up. I think I can use this aerial photo of the roundabout to illustrate, if it'll back up. There it goes. So you can see right up here, this right turn lane, northbound, you turn right onto 392. There's a traffic signal right here at the corner, and the pole has been hit by semi-trucks that are turning here. This radius is a pretty tight radius, and it's proven to be too tight for some trucks, and the rear wheels jumped the curb and then have scraped the pole. And so, what this is to make some improvements out there, and we haven't finalized what we're gonna do, but kind of the leading candidate is to put up a new signal pole in the middle of the raised island there, and get it away from the inside of the curve, so we're currently looking at that.
Dennis,
Yes, sir.
can I ask you, back in 2018, the design of Crossroads Extension?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of like what we were talking about with Johnny Olson, correct?
Mhm.
Bringing 23 down behind Kodak or behind Bro, and then hooking up with Crossroads Boulevard. Wasn't that one of the options he mentioned?
Right, I think what he sketched on the board that night was more taking Crossroads, and instead of angling or heading it then east when you get to 23, because the long-range plan that Weld County, Greeley, and Windsor have had for several years is to connect Crossroads with O Street and Greeley.
Right.
Johnny's sketch on the board, I think, was a little more, you curve at Crossroads up, and you make a nice gentle curve and head it right to 392. So I don't know if that's how it'll, or eventually turn out, or whether we will utilize the existing north-south county roads to intersect Crossroads, and then traffic on 392 can use those north-south roads down to Crossroads. So our design, though, is ending at County Road 23, and so doesn't have that element of curving up to 392 as Johnny had sketched.
I think, if I can kind of pick up on that, and it's probably more to just fly the flag again of, I think at the end of the day, I haven't seen that roadway improvement, but I hope somewhere in there is a goal that says reduce truck traffic on Main Street. And certainly talking to Johnny Olson, CDOT, about possibly rerouting 392 was where he had come up with that design. The fear in my mind is that we do this O Street connector, having invested all the funds to do that, suddenly it's gonna negate the ability to reroute 392. I don't, I realize this has been discussed and agreed between the county, Weld County and others, but I'd hate to see us miss an opportunity here to sort of do two things. Satisfy Greeley and their desire to connect O Street, but also somehow get truck traffic off of Main. If it requires perhaps a pause in design and a rethinking of the goal of the project, but.
Yeah, I think County Road 23 is not so far east that it precludes some type of streamlined connection between 392 and Crossroads in the future. So I don't visualize the design that we're doing precluding that at all. So, and if we could do some sketches maybe and send it out to the board in the future to kind of show you what I'm visualizing there could happen. But
And it may be, you'll get to it, but is there a capital project item in 2019 that continues on that Crossroads connector?
no, we're doing the design this year, 60% level. We don't have any funding identified for building this design.
Okay.
It's going to be many millions of dollars.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And
All right, great. Thank you.
what the thought was back when this idea of the 60% design was conceived was, let's get a design on paper so that if funds then become available, say like another federal Tiger Grant or something like that, we will have a shovel-ready project. Or if we want to apply to the state for some funds, we have something that's 60% design.
Okay, thank you.
I assume that the design you're doing is not gonna hinder us in any way. In fact, it'd be an asset because you always have to have designs before anything can go forward. Would it make sense, and I think it would, to include CDOT in this at the front end as you're doing the design work, that in the event that that they have support or we have support to move 392 to Crossroads and put it up like Johnny Olson was talking about, it just seems like it makes sense to involve CDOT in this process right now.
Well, I believe, we have a deadline to get the design done. We've had this design, the concept, on the Great Western Industrial Park master plans. So I don't think it would be a good idea to step back and try to alter this design. I think, like as I said a minute ago, this design, I believe, there can be a connection. It doesn't preclude this connection to 392 in the future with this design. And I wish I had some graphics or we had time to maybe draw some on the
Yeah, and I agree it would
whiteboard or
not
something,
preclude, but
I think we're
are we in communication with CDOT about what we're doing on design in 392? Because it could play into a future project with them.
Yeah, we met with CDOT about a month ago, just to talk about the interchange at Highway 257 and Crossroads, and adjustments to that signal. They were made aware of the scope of the project at that time.
Well, and I believe that when Johnny Olson brought up that idea, he was aware at that time, or it came up, we did the design on Crossroads, so it was, I don't know how engaged they are, I don't think that's really engaged in it, but I think that their staff understands that we're doing this design.
And I know he threw that out there about perhaps that change of moving 392. But I think there's a lot of background stuff that has to happen, I mean, before we get there. I mean, he just kind of threw that out there because I don't know who else is, even at the CDOT or at that other level, is on board with that, if that's just his idea. So we really can't be moving in that direction yet because we don't have really, we haven't gone through the proper protocol, so to speak, of all the levels to get us to that point where we can have those, start having that conversation. Hey, we're moving in this direction.
Right, and Your Honor, I think what I hear the board saying is, you guys would hate for us to go and do this design and completely preclude the idea of someday having Crossroads take this traffic. And I think staff's heard you, and I like the idea of Dennis and his team going back and showing you some conceptually how we could pair this design and still, you know, would it look exactly like Johnny maybe put it on the whiteboard for us, but you know, again, we've heard you, and we completely agree that we don't want to preclude big vision in truck traffic on 392 like it is.
Okay.
Should also be noted that Weld County just recently contacted us about doing a corridor study to connect from Oak Street to our connection point just recently. So I'm going to be sharing information with Weld County as well.
So, forgive me for asking this, but I thought that the money that we were allocating for engineering of Crossroads turning into I thought that this was because this project was a reality, that it was gonna be cost shared between Weld County and Windsor, that this wasn't just a shovel-ready project, that this was actually gonna get done. No?
It's always just been a design.
It's always just been a design. I thought a year or so ago when we were talking about this, it sounded like this was an actual project that was actually gonna be accomplished, that it wasn't
It was just a grant from DOLA, and all the parties came together to agree to, let's get it into design, so if money came forward at some point, then we could come back to say, hey, let's make it a reality. But there's no monies outside of the design to allocate it to move forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be a very expensive project, as you can imagine, because one of the big elements is the Poudre River Bridge, a brand-new bridge. So it's gonna take some big funding sources.
I gotta make a comment here. It just seems like, you know, Weld County might be thinking X, we might be thinking Y. Johnny Olson, CDOT suggested something else, and when I was at the MPO, a couple other CDOT people said something about moving 392. So I know, at least informally, they're having conversations. There's no plan, but it's kind of starting to look like there's this group, this group, this group, and no one's really coordinating this whole thing about where are we really going the next few years with, are we connecting Dole Street? Did we want to do that as well as move 392? So I'm kind of seeing a fuzzy picture here. And before each entity starts spending money or doing things or not doing things, we maybe need to figure out how to coordinate all this.
Yeah, I think we can continue to talk to CDOT, but again, this design that we're doing
Right,
does not.
that's a good piece, yes, yeah. But I'm saying that's a piece of a bigger picture that is a little fuzzy, I think.
Madam Mayor, may I add to?
Sure.
Just to add to that, because I think you're absolutely right. Mr. Baker, in one conversation, shared, why are we doing this? And I'm not sure what the benefit is to Windsor
Not
to
Oak
have
Street.
Crossroads connect to Oak. I don't know, maybe you get to Greeley a little faster. I've not had a problem to date. Whereas our motivation is to get truck traffic off of Main.
Right.
And I don't see how we're getting that out of the current proposal, but.
Yeah.
I would agree there seems to be different goals and they don't necessarily line up. Well, I guess maybe that horse is
Yeah, so.
enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So talk about street maintenance. Curtis spearheads our street maintenance projects every year. So that includes asphalt overlays. You see there 1.9 million. What our goal is to have overall our streets have a pavement condition index, that's PCI, of 70. A score of 100 is a perfect new street. 70 is a good street. Curtis, you want to explain that second bullet about the dollars? What that means?
So every year, whenever we do a roadway overlay, we go in and upgrade the sidewalks if they're in deterioration, so if they're cracked or settled. You have to also upgrade all the corners to meet current ADA requirements, which include slope and your detectable warning devices, the metal with the nubs on it. And so what we've done is we actually have gone a year ahead, and we do the concrete a year ahead of the overlay. That way our overlay crews aren't being held up by concrete. Actually, about 3 years ago, we were still waiting on concrete to be done right now to get overlay. So we were pushing things into the late fall. And we've moved to this pattern to try to expedite the projects, and the last 2 years have been successful. So, and what we find is about for every $4 of overlay, we're doing about $1 of concrete work along those overlays. And it's rough because a lot of our older streets have a lot more concrete, and then some of our newer streets just need the ramps upgraded. And then we also do streets that don't have any sidewalks.
So out of the total 2.6 million, the 1.9 is for the asphalt overlay, and then the 700 and some thousand is for combination of seal coating, crack sealing, and then concrete replacement that Curtis is talking about. So, and that's all funded by sales and use tax. Plus, we've been using the oil severance tax and oil and gas royalties in the last few years. So, any questions on that before I go to the next slide? Here, these are maps that Curtis has put together for what he plans to do in 2019, and you can see they're color coded down here for crack repair, roadway seal projects, and then the overlay projects. So, crack repair and seal coating are of course much less expensive than overlays, but they go a long way in preserving your infrastructure system so that you don't have to do overlays as soon as you otherwise would. So we like to spend a fair amount of money on that as a preventative maintenance practice. So,
Just had a question about that. Top left-hand corner, the blue lines, crack repair, is that Jacoby Farm?
Yes.
And it's like a couple years old is all, and already the streets are cracked?
So typically the cracks that we're trying to hit the streets are when they're about 3 to 5 years old. Those
Okay.
streets, a lot of those streets in there are actually a little older than that. Some of it was done with the school, but
Okay.
a lot of them are about 3 years old. So
Okay. I'm just
they're- and
surprised that they need
that
repair.
section is probably towards the bottom of my priority. So what I do is I put it out, try to get as many pounds of materials as I can, make a priority of the streets that need it the most, and then go down that priority list. And so a lot of streets, some of the streets may not get it done, but then there's times where we'll actually have to add streets, additional streets, and we get good numbers and stuff. So,
I was just surprised that a relatively new development needed repair this quickly.
yeah,
So
and it's
what, if
mainly
there's
to
something in the
get
design or the construction that wasn't?
No,
Okay.
they're in pretty good, they're in really good shape. It's a lot of it's to get the, between the curb and gutter and the asphalt sealed up.
Okay.
During the winter, the asphalt will shrink a little bit, and then we'll seal that joint up. And so when we get our spring rains, that water doesn't go down into the subgrade and start making the roads deteriorate faster. It gets into the curb and gutter.
So it's somewhat preventative
Yeah,
maintenance.
let's go, the crack seal is definitely preventive action.
You can't stop asphalt from cracking. In fact, it'll crack within a year or two of being built. You can't stop it, but what you should do is seal it up so that water can't go in there and go into the subgrade. And then this is a map of the next 4 years of overlay projects that Curtis has put together. Then this project, the State Highway 257, Eastman Park Drive intersection improvements, widen intersection to the east. We have as it says right here, a CDOT grant for $1 million, and we're putting in 600,000. I don't know if there's a map of it right here. So I think you're all familiar with, say, a westbound truck trying to make a left turn to go south on 257 and how tight this is in between these red islands. And so what this does, it takes and opens up the intersection more. The green here are the new islands. And so this will be pulled back. The signal poles will have to be pulled back with them and widen this up in here so that the trucks can make their turns more easily.
Will they be able to get the blades around there in one try?
No, I think the blades probably still do this maneuver, come through here. I don't think we could make that intersection quite big enough for a blade. Maybe we can get them to try it sometime. But of course we wouldn't want to get it stuck in there either. So that's that project. That the CDOT grant comes through the North Front Range MPO that we applied for a couple years ago. What's this? Oh. The Main Street 300 block diagonal parking and bulb outs. That's in conjunction with the mill, and I guess we don't have a map of that. But you probably recall that we started this when the mill was being rebuilt to begin with, the initial one. We wanted to increase parking downtown because we knew the extra traffic that we're going to get for patrons going to the mill. We would need more parking. We also wanted to improve the pedestrian safety at 3rd and Main, and that's why the bulb outs. And now that the mill is about ready to get back going again, we anticipate in 2019 the need to finish this. And we went through a pretty long and rigorous effort with CDOT on this back in 2017 to get approval for this diagonal parking and these bulb outs, and narrowing the traffic lanes from 2 to 1 in the east and west directions in the 300 block. So we have that approved and we have the permit, and so we plan to make it happen next year.
Is that both sides of Main or
Both
just
sides.
the south?
Both sides.
Both sides?
Yes.
Do we really want more diagonal parking on Main? I mean, is there?
It works so well now.
Is there any place else we could put parking? Between the lake and Main, is that our property now?
Are you talking about the DDA lots?
Back lots.
Yeah, the back lots. Are you talking about that? But
Well, no, east of the buildings. The open field there between Main and the lake,
yeah,
or between Main and the tracks.
yeah. I don't know if we own that or not. Anybody?
I don't think we do. I don't think we own that, but I can look and let you know.
Yeah, and Eric is looking right now.
The DDA doesn't either. I mean, we own a little bit, just through that driveway there, but.
Right across the street from the mill,
Yeah.
between Main and the lake.
There's no
Right, I mean, the mayor's right, when I walked it with, the DDA, I think that the DDA owns a little piece of that, but
Yeah, just a sliver on that corner.
I don't know if the rest of that open space, if that's owned by, or open space, I don't know if the rest of that green field is owned by us or not.
Yeah, I know we'll need more parking for those businesses,
I think
but the
one thing.
diagonal is just not good anymore.
One thing it does is makes our Main Street, our downtown, more urbanized, and maybe discourages trucks. On. State Highway 392 widening at Larimer County Road 5 design. So this is the intersection up there at County Road 5 where Poudre Valley REA is on the southeast corner. And this is adding another westbound lane and also another eastbound lane. Traffic backs up quite regularly during the day at that intersection, and so if you may recall, we had Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevik do a study for us and prescribe the improvements that we should do, and so this is the design of those improvements.
When's that work gonna be done then?
Design in 2019, and the construction is expected in 2020. I think that's in the 2020 plan.
Okay.
So paint me a picture of how's, I think it's great, but we're not adding a lane, so how's widening?
We are adding lanes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand. I was.
I don't know, Vicki, do we have any graphics?
Okay.
Go down, next slide.
Just click, you have bullets, say it says construction 2020.
I know, do we have any graphics that show the lanes?
We just tell them when.
We, maybe we can go on and,
And
We
Dr.
can show-
Jones, while he's looking at it, it looks like that area is owned by the DDA.
The whole area?
That whole area?
Well,
That and,
we can send you the graphic, that 392 widening, so you can see what it involves.
And, excuse me for not catching up on this, but the bridge is still gonna be 2 lane, right?
This is just at County Road 5.
Right, just that County Road 5.
This
That's
is
County Road 5, okay, that's.
one
that
area.
Gotcha.
Does this still require any kind of blessing from CDOT?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They'll have to review the design, and that's why, probably designing it in 2019 and building it in 2020 is a reasonable timeline. There's also something else has to do with this intersection. You know, we shared that study with the Greeley CDOT staff. Found out recently that the CDOT headquarters in Denver, they are looking at this intersection also. So I believe the Greeley staff shared our Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevik study with them, but the way I understand it, the headquarters staff are also doing their own kind of analysis. So we'll have to see what comes out of that effort too.
So designing and construction the same year is just asking too much.
If it wasn't on the state highway, I'd be more optimistic. You know, judging from how much time it took just to get the 300 block of Main Street
Yeah.
through.
And going back to that, with the diagonal parking and all that, CDOT's still gonna allow to move the speed reduction zone out east on 392? Weren't they, as a part of the mill, when we were leading up to that a year ago or something, they were going to allow the bottleneck down to the slower speed to be further out east? Like east of, First or something like that would be where it would actually be coming down, like it funnels down to 1 lane in each direction. Wasn't that gonna move out east a little bit?
At one time, if I understand you correctly, you know, one time we were going to try to extend the single lane in each direction out to Chimney Park Drive.
Right.
They rejected that.
Oh,
It'll the 2 lanes will reduce to 1 lane right at First Street now. So it'll narrow down to 1 lane before you cross over the railroad tracks, and then of course it'll be 1 lane until you get back out to 7th Street. So yeah, they wouldn't accept that. Traffic signals then, We did warrant studies at these intersections you see here, New Liberty, County Road 13 intersection, New Liberty and 7th Street. They meet warrants, and so we're proposing traffic signals at those two intersections in 2019. And then this third one, County Road 13, should say County Road 74, Harmony. We'll pay half of that signal cost. The town of Timnath has that intersection, and they intend to construct a signal at that intersection. Probably first part of 2019, and Windsor will pay half of that, but it'll be a Timnath signal.
Will Timnath maintain 100%?
Yes.
Great.
And then the last bullet here is pedestrian crossing improvements. We've put $100,000 in for 2019 and anticipate putting it that same amount in each year for the next few years for possible improvements that as they are warranted and as they're needed, then we'll have the money in the budget to do those. It costs about $20,000 per installation for the flashing beacon at an intersection.
So, and the board will recall, like, every time we get out, we talk to the public, this comes up, safe crossing. So, this is just staff's attempt to say, okay, you know, what's reasonable? Can we do 5 a year? Can we go and kind of use the study that Dennis already has to determine, does it meet the warrants? Is it worth doing? And then just start whittling this down. You know, if we did 5 a year, I think that, you know, we're not gonna make everybody happy, but we'll know we've got a solid effort in that vein.
When we talked about safe street crossings, we talked about doing some data collection. So it's not just my perception of this crosswalk or that crosswalk. Where are we with that?
We have certain intersections that we're gonna hire a consultant to do those counts. So, yeah, the guidelines are very data-driven, numbers-driven. You have to meet certain pedestrian counts and certain vehicle counts. So what we do is hire a consultant to do those when.
I thought we were going to do that this fall when school started again.
Yeah.
So that's still
Yes.
in progress. Great. Good.
Because, of course,
Good.
certain schools aren't in session yet.
Yeah, September. Good.
Hey, Dennis, I just had a question. So County Road 13, besides the traffic light at New Liberty, what I see is an overlay for 2019. And then I don't want to get out, obviously want to get out beyond that at this point in time, but, you know, with Rain Dance, with the, you know, almost 3,000 homes, and using Scott Ballstat's number of 2.73 residents per home, you know, it's going to be another over 8,000, approximately 8,000 residents out in that area. So I think that's something that has to be on our radar, but I think there are some pain points right now that maybe could be addressed in 2019. I think one of them I brought up before, when 392 is extended to 4 lanes out to County Road 13, coming into town, you would no longer have to merge, then have it turn into 4 lanes or 2 lanes going east. Sounds like that's going to be taken care of. But coming northbound on County Road 13 into 392, there's no left turn lane there. And that's maybe something I would like to see us think about. That's it may not have the same pain as like County Road 5 and 7th and Main and various other intersections, but certainly it's a problem now and it's going to be an increasing problem. I don't know if that's something that's been looked at yet or something we need to look at.
It's something that needs to be looked at. The one issue with that northbound is in Windsor. The southbound part of County Road 13 is not in Windsor, and of course that has to be widened also to put a left turn lane in the northbound section. So there are some. It's not in Windsor. We'd have to work with Larimer County and the adjacent property owner to get right away to build to widen 13. But yeah, it's. I was thinking that was one of the priorities that was identified in the road improvement plan, Scott. You know? So we recognize that a left turn lane there would be very good.
Okay, thank you.
Then street oversizing, in conjunction with certain developments, if we have a arterial road that is identified in the road improvement plan as needing to be widened, and the adjacent development is going in, we ask them to do the widening, and then we reimburse them for certain aspects of that widening. And so this is our best guess at coming up in 2019. Harmony Road between County Road 13 and 15. Actually, work has started last week on that part of the road. So I definitely think we're gonna owe that in 2019. Then Larimer County Road 5 at Ptarmigan, fourth filing. That's Larimer County Road 5 starting at 392 and going a half mile north to County Road 32E. We're anticipating that will happen in 2019, and so we're budgeting money for that. And then this should say Larimer County Road 5 at Fossil Creek Ranch. That's the portion of County Road 5 north of 32E. There's a development that might go, I don't know what the chances are of that happening in 2019, but if it happens, we have money ready for it.
So what we just talked about before with the traffic study, was that just for the intersection? And this is going north? What was the
Yeah,
other?
the intersection, yeah. Felsberg, Holden, Ullvig, we hired them specifically to look at the problems we were seeing with east and westbound traffic on 392 stacking up so far.
And then this will just be north?
Yeah, this is north.
Yeah, so this is, the improvements on 5 are really kind of being development driven.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you did, as the development comes through, he needs to widen 5, and clearly, I think with or without the development, County Road 5 needs to be widened. So we're just using this as an opportunity to do that work. But yeah, the two are, even though they're right there, they're not really connected.
So if the developer is delayed a year or two, does that mean we're not gonna make those improvements, or is that something we can determine and get reimbursed?
That's typically how it would happen, is if the developer, for whatever reason, pulls back, doesn't do his development, we would step in and do it. Now, if it was identified, I suppose, that, well, this is something we just have to have done, even though he's not going to do his development, then we could look at picking up the ball and trying to run with it. I expect that would probably take a year's time to make that determination,
Yeah.
regroup, and try to put that together.
Yeah, so I just want to put out, some of this money we're going to put out, we'll get back, is properties adjacent developed, we're just basically, the developer's paying for his share of 5, and we're picking up the adjacent properties that are in development right now. So if this development went away and the board said, no, this is our top priority to get this done, the town could do that and then just know we're spending more money now. But as or when these properties develop, we could get some of that investment back.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm guessing these are developments that don't involve a special district, because I think, at least as I've known it, the special district is collecting property taxes generally, often for infrastructure improvements to build out the neighborhood, et cetera, and is reimbursed really out of property tax revenues, and then they dedicate all of that infrastructure to the town. But this sounds like,
And I think that's true for the interior streets for the subdivision are normally paid by that metro district. And I don't know if the improvements on 5 adjacent to the development, if the metro district is paying for that, I can't say how they would have that structured. But generally, the metro districts are kind of charge the homeowners for all the interior streets and that infrastructure.
And this isn't the entire cost of the road, it's the oversizing portion. So portion of that road, for example, here, the developer is picking up the cost for. It's the entire development, or entire Larimer County Road 5 improvements are more than $2 million.
okay, thank you.
Is Is there any way the county would pitch in for this? Could we ask them?
We can ask.
I mean, it's such an important road to their facility to the south. I would think they would have some interest in it.
It is a county road.
Hmm?
It is a county road.
It's a county
It is a
road.
county
In
road.
fact, my bet is they'll want engineering oversight.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions? Move on to the next slide then. Railroad crossing improvements is kind of a placeholder. Seems like we always need some money for railroad crossing improvements, and so we're proposing $80,000 in 2019.
What would that look like, Dennis?
What kind of improvements?
Yeah.
It's, so, like this year, we had, Terry was contacted by Great Western, and they said, look, we're gonna go through and we're gonna improve some of these crossings, and would the town be willing to help? You know, I guess we pay for the materials and they do the work, and they wanted an answer like 2 days later, and we didn't really have it planned at all, so this now is just putting money in there, so if the railroad does determine that they're gonna make some improvements, and we're gonna help them pay for that, we've got it in there. It's just a nice round number for us, and it's actually based on, I think historically, about what they've done every year, kind of that $60,000 to $80,000 number. So we know it's gonna come, and we know we're not gonna get a great plan out from them probably beforehand. So,
When the railroad comes to you and wants to do a crossing, you need to get it done, because you probably won't see their willingness to do that again for several years, so, we try to jump on it when we can.
did we answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, are we talking about like how smooth they are, like
Yeah.
versus rough, or, cause we just did all the quiet zones, I'm just thinking we've done a lot of the improvements, a lot of them,
They'll
but maybe.
replace the ties and stuff under the track, and then they'll also put in the concrete inside the track, just like we've been doing on all the other crossings.
So, yeah, I think it's just smoother, it's just easier for the public. It feels more like a road than a
All in
track.
favor of that?
Okay, Poudre River maintenance, that's just a general item that we occasionally need to do some bank stabilization, remove sandbars, things like that, and to help improve flows through a bridge or something. So we don't always spend this, but it seems to pop up pretty regularly. So that's what that is. 7th Street turn lanes at Main Street, we've talked about that before. And let me go to good. We've got the graphic here for this, so.
I don't think the board needs a graph. They're well aware of this project.
Well, I wanted to,
It just went from a couple signs that we thought to now $385,000, so.
Right.
well, let me explain that a little bit. So on the left here, of course, is the existing intersection layout. The second one is, this is what Johnny Olson mentioned in that meeting we had. It's called a split phase signal timing, where you make this existing northbound lane a combination northbound and left turn. And obviously, when you do that, your southbounders can't be going through at the same time. So you give green time exclusively for your northbounders, and they do whatever they're gonna do, lefts, throughs, rights. And then you give them a red, and then you give the southbounders their green, and they do what they're doing. We've asked CDOT staff to study that and tell us whether they believe, given the traffic volumes that we have on Main Street, and will this work? And their staff is working on that.
So again, it's not, I don't think, we think that they're gonna be concerned about the southbound traffic on 7th, because that's not a whole lot of traffic, but I think as we bank traffic on Main Street, there's sometimes when you come out, like I was turning out from Dutch Bros the other day, and I couldn't even turn out. I was backed up from 7th all the way to 9th. you know, which is quite a bit of traffic banking, you know, because again, that's right where our pinch point on Main Street. So that's our concern. We don't want to kind of go with the, we'll put a sign up and cause problems down Main Street, and now we've just moved traffic and upset people. So I would just say that this is actually the plan that I think the town's been in favor of the whole time, is just widening this out. Mr. Olson had offered up kind of a quicker fix, and if that'll actually work and it won't cause a problem, great, let's just change the traffic sign and be done with it. But I think based on the other traffic flows, our sense is once CDOT comes back with their assessment, they're gonna say that that isn't a real fix. You're gonna need to widen and actually turn it, you know, make a double turn lane.
Do we have the right of way already?
Yeah, I believe we can just squeeze it in there, and that's option 2 here. We'll have to take out this grass that's currently there behind the curb and push that over to the sidewalk that's there. But our right-of-way should be approximately at the back of sidewalk today. So now we may have to get a little bit of corner right-of-way here at the corner. But I think generally we have enough room for the lanes.
What about their nice new digital sign that they got approved? Is that gonna be affected by that?
Don't think so.
Or will the line of sight be affected?
Well, they
sign.
went through getting not a conditional use grant, what's the they went through Board of Adjustment to get that digital sign put in, 7-Eleven did right there on the corner. Because code didn't allow it to be there. I just wanted to make sure that that was a question that got asked, if we're gonna have to move their sign or destroy it and have to put up a new one, and that's all part of the cost of doing the intersection right there.
The $385,000 doesn't include anything to do with the sign. So
When would we do this project? Next summer, when school's out, or sooner?
yeah, I would say summer would be
Because are you gonna have to
Soon.
close any of that to complete any of this, or are you gonna be able to keep some through traffic flowing?
I think you can go through. We might have to block off this existing right turn lane while they're working in here.
I think it's telling that the photo shows 3 large trucks on Main Street and 3 cars. So there's a first traffic study, 50% here.
I have a question. Why is this not part of the road impact fee? It's splitting hairs, but the funding source that says that just capital improvement fund, would this be part of the road impact fee, or does it matter?
I think it could be possibly because it is increasing capacity on your street. So I can talk
And we're kind of going, I would let the board know that I'm really trying to have these discussions with the finance staff and department heads, and just kind of the philosophies as far as, okay, why are we paying it out of this fund, and where does this come? So I think we're gonna probably take a harder look at that.
Okay.
Definitely will, to just say, you know, who bears the burden of this? So, but I think it could go either way.
It's fine.
So Dennis, you're adding 1 lane into the 7-Eleven parking lot, basically, right?
The meat grass strip.
Yeah, and that's going to improve the traffic flow coming south and getting the arrow to go east?
you'll have 2 left turn lanes here, northbound, and so you can turn twice as many cars in the same green time as we currently do with a single left turn lane. So, and then you have this single through lane, and then you still have a right turn lane.
Okay, so northbound and southbound will be able to turn the same,
Yes.
That's right.
on the same arrow?
Well, yeah, that same green arrow, right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then here's the State Highway 392 widening up at County Road 5 coming east to 17th Street. And so that's the part that takes in the majority of that stretch of 392 between Windsor and I-25. Of course, includes the bridge on the Poudre River. This is only design.
The 750 is only design?
Yes.
And the thinking here is we'll have a shovel-ready project if funds become available?
That's,
Because that's a lot of money to put out with not knowing when this is gonna happen. As important as it is, I see zeros
Yeah.
as far as I can see into 23, and to spend
Mhm.
750,000, it's a lot. Could that go to another roadway project?
sure. Yeah, there's a lot involved with this. Of course, CDOT, you have to do everything, design everything according to CDOT standards, but you're also going through a floodplain, floodway,
Mhm.
and so you have to do a lot of environmental work. So it's a major design project.
And what's the projected replacement time on the bridge? The bridge is a major problem here, right? Because it's 2 lanes and it's in good condition, as I understand. It's a long time before
Well,
CDOT would ever
yeah.
replace it.
Johnny Olson's indicated to us that it's rated as a pretty good bridge.
Right.
I don't know exactly what that means. It was built in the 60s, so I think it's probably getting close to its design life, but that's been his indication in the past.
And you wouldn't know like the score when they do when they go through and score them?
Yeah, I
What worse
don't
is.
know what the score is on that one. We can find out.
I thought
You
it
think,
was
you think
scored
that
pretty-
bridge is almost 60 years
I
old?
thought it scored pretty
Yeah.
high.
It's-
Yeah.
It scores
It's built
pretty
in
I think we think it's scored pretty
It
high.
scores pretty high in
So in terms-
comparison to some other bridges.
Right.
Now,
So in terms of being
functionally,
shovel-ready
it's
and-
obsolete, but structurally, apparently, it's okay.
But that can turn pretty quick. You can take a decent scoring bridge and in just in a couple years and a couple inspections and have some cracks show up where they weren't
Right.
before. I mean, it can go quick. I don't wanna make you feel bad about the infrastructure in the community, but those things can move from a decent score to pretty poor pretty quickly. They really can.
And the second one, we've already talked about that. That's the 392 widening County Road 5 design.
So that's the same we saw before, that's not another,
That's
okay.
the same. Then water line oversizing, just like street oversizing. If we have a water main go through a development that, for our master plan, we need a larger main than what they need, we require them to oversize it, and we pay for that oversizing. That's what this is.
Where's that going at, Dennis?
This is Poudre Heights' third filing, phase 1.
Does that come off of the first filing?
Yes, correct.
So will that have any impact on the current neighborhood?
The first phase will not, because it's not tying into another water source, and so no, it doesn't improve it, isn't a detriment either.
I'm just saying like River Place isn't getting torn up in order to do the oversizing or anything like that, is it?
The existing River Place, no. There's a stub at the end of River Place they'll connect onto.
Where the reflector things are.
Yeah, where the hydrant is.
Turn your water off for a week.
The second bullet there is potential water line interconnect with Fort Collins Loveland on County Road 13 at New Liberty. We're still discussing the details of that with the district. So,
Is that just for backup for both systems?
Yes.
It's not to deliver more to us,
it's
correct?
just backup.
Okay.
Yes. Third bullet is just non-potable water rights for Kiger Reservoir. We put money in the budget each year for the potential of buying water rights that we can use in Kiger for our augmentation plan. And so we're constantly looking for water rights to buy that will work there. And so that's what this is, basically a placeholder. Okay, next slide. Again, more water rights shares. This is for a potable water system, and the 2019 estimated balance is a little over 4 million. And let's see, the 3-year average of revenue into that fund or for that purpose is 1.9 million. There again, we try to budget, or we try to spend, what comes in goes back out in water rights, but it's, you know, water rights keep getting more expensive and harder to find, so it's more of a challenge than it used to be. But our objective is to turn cash into water. North Integrated Supply Project, at the last participants meeting, they gave us a new number for 2019, which is considerably less than what we had before. It's 742,500. And then here's our long-term price on that project.
Dennis, when you do that, water purchasing, and I realize it's kind of a closed bid process, right? And I think the last couple of bids that we were short compared to what was the higher bid in the market. And the strategy on that, when you say you're turning cash into water, I mean, at some point, we probably have to get more aggressive bidding, I think.
Right, and we have to raise our cash in lieu price too,
Yeah, that too.
for development. And John Thornhill is working on that, what that should be.
And so that'll be coming to the board fairly quickly. I mean, I do think we need, the concept I told staff is almost like a fresh seafood daily. You know, we need to have market pricing for the CBT shares. You know, we can't possibly pick the right number because it's going up so quickly. So we need our policy of like literally like a chalkboard there, like today CBT's 32.5 and, you know.
KT.
Yeah, that's right. So that's gonna be coming to the board really quickly, and I just signed something from John, so we are buying some CBT shares. I just signed.
Those are being transferred to us from a developer.
Okay, all right.
Developer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're acquiring as we go, as we can. But yeah, so that's gonna come to the board quick, like I would say in the next month.
Yeah. The sewer intercepted Highway 257 and Harmony Road. That's what we had projected, you know, a couple weeks ago, but now with the new direction, so just pass that up. There's a map showing what the concept was. Sewer line oversizing, again, developers putting a sewer main through their development, and if it's part of our master plan to continue on into other areas, so we want it oversized. This is what we anticipate in 2019.
Is that in conjunction with that other 30,000?
It's, yeah, this is the sewer, and that was water. 10th Street drainage improvement. This is a small project at the, it's where 10th Street takes a 90-degree turn and goes west. There's a drainage problem there at an inlet that we need to make some improvements, so it's a relatively small project. And then the Law Channel, again, a small project. As you can see, we need to build an access for maintenance into an area that can't currently get into. And then the River Bend detention pond improvements, and I think we have a map here. So this is the River Bend detention area, and some of the drainage water comes in this end, and this end is the outlet. Some also comes off of Parkwood into the outlet here, and there's also a groundwater underdrain system in this subdivision that a lot of the water daylights and drains right at this end of the detention pond, and then to find its way to the outlet, it has to travel overland. And what it's done is that this has become a bog, cattails. There's cattails growing in this area here. So the thought is to extend an underdrain and try to convey this water directly to the outlet and not let it run on the surface through this area here. So trying to improve the looks, maintenance, and just general upkeep of this.
Where's the water go at the end of that?
This goes to the Poudre River.
So does that cause issues like with high mosquito count and stuff in that area?
I think possibly, we have standing water here and therefore potential for mosquitoes.
How'd the town end up owning that?
It's a stormwater detention area for this subdivision. It was dedicated to town when this was built. It's part of their drainage improvements. So 2019, Chestnut Street to Eastman Park drainage improvements. Phase 1 in 2019 is this $950,000, and we're doing the design in this year yet, and hope to be under construction in 2019. And the phase 2 of that is here, and phase 3 in 2021 for a total of $2.6 million. And here's a map of the, I guess first some photos of some of the problem areas that we're trying to improve.
Doesn't look that bad.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's Windsor Lake.
Is that part 2?
This came out of our storm drainage master plan update a year ago as a project that's recommended. And so here's, oops, shouldn't have done that. I don't know if I can go back. There we go. Here's the map that shows what we're doing. So here's Chestnut, East Park Drive, and it's to improve the drainage. This is Folkestone detention area, and then piping down through here. So that's what we're the area we're working in. So that's it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Staying with the infrastructure theme here, we have Terry Walker here to talk about some water and sewer fund projects for next year.
Come on down.
Okay, we try to do our water main replacements along with the year before the roads are done. And so this year we did the water line replacements prior to the roads being done on Nantucket and Rose and Ivy in that neighborhood. Lift station number 5 replacement was right where Dennis was just showing you the map. We're right off of the end of Parkwood, I think's what it's called. And that's being replaced. And then our sewer line rehab is the different sewer lines that we have throughout the town. They're usually in the older part that are 50, 60 years old, and we're lining those sewer lines, or 95% of them. Some of them we have to dig up and replace, but that's ongoing. And then the manhole rehab is all those manholes in the older part of town, again, are 50 or 60 years old. They're made out of brick. So we go in and put an epoxy, have them epoxy to make it all clear and nice and smooth, and it keeps all water from being able to percolate in the manholes, and makes it a lot safer for the ladders and the guys to go in and out of the manholes. Water line replacements, as you can see here. We're going to replace water main from Cottonwood Drive and Cottonwood Court, Walnut Street from 10th to 11th. In 2020, 2021, 7th Street from Railroad to Cedar Court. 2022, we have a 24-inch ductile iron pipe from County Road 3 to Well County Road 13. The reason that's so critical is that's what runs along the bridge off of 392, and we've already had that break, and it's once you start having one break like that on ductile iron pipe, you're gonna start seeing it elsewhere because that soil is so hot in along there because of the river, and it just eats the pipe away. And then 2023, 16-inch from 11th Street to 10th Street drainage.
Terry, are these always done in conjunction with road
Yes.
overlays or road in?
Yeah, we try to meet up with Curtis, and we talk to him about what our water lines we're gonna do, and then we coordinate the streets, so we're not having to go in after the streets have been completely redone and then having to do the water mains.
How do you pick these particular lines? I mean, is it
Well,
because you know the age and it's
We
kind of...
know the age and problems that we've had over the years of, you know, main breaks. And when you start seeing quite a few of those, you know it's about time to replace the line. But Windsor has always been very proactive in regards to replacing their infrastructure. And where all these we've had problems with, that's how they raise up on the priority chart.
I have kind of a general question that's kind of brought out here. But when we have all these projects that we're looking at that are like in the future, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and we have these projected costs, do they have a variable in there for a cost increase, or that's in today's cost? So do we know that by 2023, that $1 million is gonna be more like 1.3, or are we taking into account it is 5 years from now and the analysis includes that?
No, we do them in today's dollars, and then next.
So very likely, some of these could be higher, or maybe lower if we're in a different, you know, timeline, I don't know, but.
That's right, yeah, so again, you know, when the board's adopting the 2019 capital budget, I mean, you're adopting the budget. Everything else, 2020 and beyond, is just more of a future.
Kind of an estimate.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
And do these prices include the street, the asphalt,
No, these prices are just to replace the water
just
main.
for the lines?
Yeah.
Is there a map? Yeah, there you go.
So here on the map, you can see the areas in yellow are what's gonna be done next year. The light blue in 2020, the orange is in 2021, green in 2022, and the purple in 2023, or pink, whatever you wanna call it. Any questions? So for 2019, the replacement of our blower out at the wastewater treatment plant. The reason we need to replace that is right now it's just not big enough for the amount of wastewater that we have being treated. And so we have to replace the blower to meet our permit standards. And so that'll take place in 2019. Sewer line rehab, that's based on, we televise different sewer lines each year, and then we find out which ones are problems with roots growing into them, or just the shape that they're in. Maybe they're not, you know, real stable and they've settled a little bit, or whatever the case may be. So then we in situ form that, which is a liner that's put in the sewer line, and then they go on with a robotic, and they cut out the surfaces and everything. So the manhole rehab, of course, we talked about.
Terry, can I ask you really quick what the blower is down at the wastewater treatment facility? What does a blower do?
Well, the blower is what helps with the aeration, everything of the ponds and diffusing of the sludge. And you get to a point where you're handling so much more wastewater than what you normally would as your plant grows. And so right now we have found out that in order to meet our permit requirements to the state and the feds, that we're gonna have to replace that blower.
Thank you.
So here you can see the sanitary sewer line rehab plan through the years. And so that's what we'll be doing over the next 5 years. this is a map of all of our manholes that we'll be doing. And we'll be close to having all the older part of town done. We still have a few more to do, but we started this several years ago, and so we're finally getting to the point where the really bad manholes will have all done. That's it. Any questions? Yeah, okay.
Public Works Building, you had talked one time about the possible need for garage door openers. I didn't see that in a capital improvement plan. Where are we with that? Is that still a need? or-
Shane and I have been talking about that, and we'll see, you know, we can probably go another year if need be. But we have so many projects this year that we'll talk about and see what we can do and what we can't do, depending on when we get into the next part of the budget.
That's right, yeah, so, quickly, I'd say that, you know, we're really with the school district evicting us from the maintenance facility and needing to construct a new parks shop. That's really kind of taking the precedent, you know, we don't have a choice there, we can't wait, so, and that's a big part of your capital budget this year, is just gonna be that project. So we will see, I'm aware of that need, and, you know, I would also say that, you know, I have talked to Terry and to Eric. I know previously there was a plan, originally there was the idea of putting the parks shop and the public works shop together. And that is still an option we're gonna explore as staff to see, is there enough room, can we do that there? And I think if that, if our decision tree kind of leads us down that path, I think as we go through and we make improvements to parks, we can also look at what's going on in public works and see how we can best use that space with both departments. So it's not intentionally in the budget right now, but it's also not being ignored necessarily.
Yeah, Paul?
I'm gonna catch you off guard with this question. My neighborhood, as well as a bunch of others last summer, were slurry sealed. And the slurry seal is not holding up. We have loose rock all over, which is not how the slurry seal with vendors in years past. I specifically mentioned something, Brian Rowe, and I think he had said that he had mentioned something, but something's wrong with what the vendor did. 'Cause
Yeah, I'd have to talk to Curtis on that. I don't know which vendor he had do that area. But I can talk to him, and
I just didn't know what the solution might be. Is there anything placeholder wise that we could put in? Is it gonna be under warranty, you know, or what?
I doubt whether it's gonna be under warranty.
Have you ever come out to see what we're referring to at all?
No.
There's just the loose black gravel.
And that will happen to a degree. You'll get that coming off of the road. But I'd have to come and look to see at what degree, you know, it's coming off. But Dennis can also talk to Curtis about it, and we can go look at it.
I'd appreciate that, because it's not just my neighborhood, and Dennis might even be familiar with, you know, Dennis and Scott within our neighborhood, but there's something going on with
Right.
the slurry seal. I don't
Okay.
know what.
We'll take a look at it and get back with you.
Terry, in the past, the vendor, I think, came back after a couple weeks and did their own street sweeping. I don't know if that happened this year. I had some complaints on my area as well. I don't know if that's chip seal or slurry seal. I don't know the difference.
We can talk to Curtis about that as well.
Recently? Just
Maybe they
recently?
used a different vendor who
Maybe.
didn't do that extra.
Well, this is what happened 2 years ago. We walked at the Harvest Parade, and we liked the quality of the job on 7th Street, because that was done 2 years ago. And I know Mr. Arnold said he didn't like how they had overlapped some of it or whatever, so he looked at doing a different vendor the following year, which was last year, and I don't know what,
You
we'll
get
run with
good
it from
ones and
there,
you get
but
bad ones, so.
something changed, because I think there was a change in vendor, and I don't know what the issue is. You know, Brian had a couple theories, but I know Curtis or somebody might be better
Yeah,
to.
Dennis and I'll follow up on it and get back with you.
I appreciate it, because I think it's all of what that vendor did last summer that's
Okay,
the issue, so,
thank you.
thanks, Terry.
Okay, moving from infrastructure, we will get into parks and recreation, and a man who needs no introduction, Eric Lucas.
Thanks for softening them up, Dean.
Something.
Before we get going, I wanted to thank my staff that's here, Bob and Wade and Tara. They've put a lot of the work into this, and I appreciate all their hard work and being here tonight to help answer questions if you have them that I maybe cannot. So, with that being said, 2018 completed projects are in front of you. Main Park, we had hoped to have that done before Harvest Festival, but it looks like it's going to be about September 10th, unfortunately. I'd hoped to have that done, but a long story, they had some problems at the port in Houston, tried to put the product on a truck, and if you know anything about the United States economy, super busy, and there were no trucks available, so they put it on a train, paid a little bit more money. The train broke down in Nevada. So the stuff is starting to arrive today, but that has delayed them enough that they can't meet the very tight time frame that we were on. So anyway, we're probably looking at the September 10. Either way, the community will love the new playground that they will soon have. Purchase of the creamery and the mother statue, that should be done late November, so we'll have that. Poudre Trail maintenance project, that's going to actually kick off in September, so you'll have a Poudre Trail shutdown to the east of the Kodak area, over almost to the bridge. So that'll be shut down for almost 2 months, but that will be done. We've just recently awarded the 7th and Crossroads landscaping for roundabout, so that should be done. I think that'll take about a week to do, so I would expect somewhere in the next 30 to 45 days that project will be completed. Once irrigation season is over, the automated splitter box at Chimney Park will be completed, and then we're waiting till after Labor Day to work on these special event documents for Eastman Park, and we're considering moving that over to Main Park as well. But we would definitely complete them this year. So that moves us into the Eaton House. You'll probably recall, several of you, a couple years ago we did a master plan for the Eaton House landscaping, so the outside of the facility. This is money to do a master plan for the inside of the facility, and staff would prefer to not just have another static historic building in town where people walk in and see memorabilia or artifacts that we've collected over the years in a static form, like what we have now in the schoolhouse or in the church, those kind of places. What we would prefer to do is go to a different route, because this is prime real estate right there at the entry to Boardwalk Park, is to develop this, obviously maintain the historical aspect, but develop it into an incubator type of business. So for example, if you wanted to start your donut shop here, we would lease it to you, and you could sell donuts out of it for a year. You have somewhat of a built-in audience, the people that come to the lake. You could have that going, and then maybe you were able to you figure out that people really like your donuts, and you go lease a building downtown, and now we've created a business. Or another idea would be if another brewer wanted to test their wares there and see if they could sell alcohol from that site and lease it from us. Again, if it's popular alcohol, maybe they'll go build their own site and have another establishment somewhere else in town. We'd like to basically be able to use this as a business incubator and recoup some money off of it in some term of, like a 20-30% use of that facility. So yes.
Are you going to charge a below market rent? Is that how you're going to?
We hadn't gotten into it. It's more of a theory or thought of trying to create some kind of business incubator. We've not gotten down into the details of what the rent might be, or if it was a profit sharing piece or something like that.
Or how long the lease might be.
Or how long it might be.
And one concept that I'm going to ask the board to consider is whatever we set for rent, possibly if they relocate into Windsor when they're done, maybe we just give them the entire rent amount back as an incentive, or a good portion of it. So, I don't think what we want to do, we don't want to incubate great businesses for really in Fort Collins or Severance. I think we want to incubate great businesses for Windsor. So it'd be nice if we could tie that rent piece to some kind of incentive. If they go and open up downtown Main Street or somewhere else, then they get a good portion of that initial rent back. So maybe we keep a market rate with that incentive to, stay in town.
Yeah, because we don't want to incentivize them to stay in the Eaton House for 5 years at below market rate.
That would be short term.
That's right. And sometimes these incubators will step up, you know, maybe the first year they're 50% of market and then 75 and then full market. I mean, there's ways to just kind of get them to fly out and,
Give 'em a nudge.
Fly out.
yeah.
So this, go on, sorry.
So the 40,000, is that for kind of a generic remodeling, or what's the?
We would need to, that is for the master plan to determine what we need to do inside of the house, to do some inspections, determine what needs to come out. Guarantee you there's probably asbestos in there. Understand what we need to do, and then in a future year, we would come back and say, the study said in order to do what we'd like to do inside of it, it's gonna cost X to renovate, and then we would spend that on the renovation and then get into the incubator business. So this is just a master plan to understand what we need to do to the building to make it a viable structure.
Right, but I mean, depending on the business, it may have to be remodeled a certain way, or you would.
Possibly.
Yeah. How big is that? Do you know how many square feet?
I do not know off the top of my head. When you look at that structure, and this picture is a little difficult, but the little abutment to the right, and there's another one to the left, and that front are actually add-ons, and we would rip those off and just go back to the original structure. So it's just the rectangle as it is. For example, though, maybe the plan says we should put a huge wraparound front porch into that green space to enable a business to use that as seating space. Again, prime real estate at Boardwalk.
Yeah, I like the idea.
I like the idea too, sorry. I would only be concerned because, is this on the National Register?
It is not.
Oh, so any historic protections are really our own?
Correct.
Okay, because obviously a lot of what you
Yes.
just said, you wouldn't be able to do.
Yes.
Got it, because you're right, it's a nice spot, and I was picturing a porch with, and Soslowski's Donut Shop.
I'd like to see that.
Oh, Mr. Yo's.
Dr. Jones asked my questions for me, so took words right out of my mouth.
So the next facility is the creamery. Obviously, you just saw us a couple slides ago. We will actually own the creamery probably by the end of the year. Staff has done a fabulous study that I'd be more than happy to pass along the results to you, but in a nutshell, they surveyed over 580 people in the community, got back a lot of feedback in terms of what they would like to see, what the public would like to see in that building. And basically it is a makerspace for every type of demographic that we have in terms of children, middle schoolers, high schools, adults, and seniors. So it's not just a pottery studio or a woodworking studio. It is truly a makerspace. So that's what we've kind of termed it create space. So for example, we may have a 3D printer in there, or we may have the tools for you to go in and create your product. We could teach classes in there. So that is really what we learned from the students. And so we've gone out to some construction firms and asked them, well, what do we need to do to make that building a usable building? What's it going to cost? And so that's the number that you see in front of you today is that. Again, I can forward you all the results, but what you will find is people love the facility. They love what we're building in terms of our cultural program. They'd like to see more, but they want to make sure that it touches on everybody and not just one demographic. In my example that I use, and I've talked about in the past, was to turn it into a pottery studio. And I thought that was great until you look at the statistics, and it says that something like 80% of the people, 20% want pottery, and then but 80% broken down into all the different demographics want a whole bunch of different things. So why not try to appease the masses as opposed to just 20% of the people who may want to be into pottery? So
It sort of feels like, and I guess you did a survey, I'm not convinced this is the highest and best use of this facility either, because its location is pretty nice as well.
it is.
And I could see it being a business incubator, because it's a creamery building. You could put a creamery, ice cream in it.
And that's a possibility. We were looking at it as a makerspace more for an individual. So if you were into specific craft, you could go in there and do that. Or if you're a photographer, you could go in there and do that. So it would touch more individualized businesses as opposed to something larger like an actual ice cream location. This would be something where everybody could go there, plus it would allow us to have classroom space. That is one thing, even with the recreation center being new and expanded, we are running out of space for classes, especially on the culture side.
I believe the library, if it should be moved and built, has makerspace in it as part of their design. Again, it sounds like we're going down this path, but I almost feel like I'd like to just make sure we're using the highest and best use for this particular building and location. Because it's right by the park.
Yeah.
In all fairness to this though, what the square footage isn't as big as obviously what we, or is it picture?
No, that's just a photo that I found to kind of give you an
It's
idea.
what, like 1,300 square feet or smaller?
It's smaller than that.
It's not.
Yeah, it's
How big is
probably
Eaton House?
900.
How big is Eaton House?
Eaton House isn't that big either.
Yeah.
It's small.
So that's like roughly the cost? Have we bid it out? Do we know?
That would,
what-
we asked a couple of construction firms to come give us a cost, and that's what they told us ballpark it would cost for us to
Bring it up
renovate.
to-
It needs a
bring it up
new,
to code and
yeah,
all
it
that.
needs a new roof, you're gonna have to put a bathroom there. There's a variety of things you've gotta do to make it usable for any type of use. Next is the collections facility. So you recall we recently talked to you about our museum collections facility, which is the upstairs of the Art and Heritage Museum. That is, and the number has actually changed since we just acquired all of the old Windsor Beacon papers and books. We're probably more at like 98% capacity now. So we are basically at capacity in terms of bringing in any new museums, artifacts or donations to the town. And as I talked to you at the last board meeting that we covered this topic, we lack fire suppression and any kind of climate control. So we need to do something there. And so we've gone out and asked what it would cost to build adjacent to the public work, or not the public work site, but the parks maintenance facility. And it would be 1.75 million to build that building. And again, it is basically a warehouse that has climate control in it. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. Concrete floor, steel beams, siding, and climate control in there with some shelving and that kind of stuff for storage, and that's a 5,000 square foot building. A lot of money, but you also remember in our previous conversation, all of that stuff that we've had and collected over the years is sitting in the Art and Heritage Center, and it's at risk every day that we delay doing something with it in terms of protecting it. In addition, we're turning away stuff all the time that people would like to donate to us. So this is another item that we bring forward to you this year. So, any questions on this building?
That's just to add on to the Parks building.
Yes.
Yeah, and
You could buy a house for that. I mean, a 5,000 square foot house wouldn't cost that much.
True.
right, and something that I've talked to Eric about is just, is this the best idea for us? Or is it just, really, if we're spending $1.75 million on just storing it, should we really look at more of a museum space? Should we really look at something that's on Main or somewhere closer to people where we have the storage as a part of it, but also have a lot of the stuff on display? So, this has been kind of like, the trains already been on the tracks, and we've been kind of going down this road, but, I just wonder, it just seems like a lot of money to spend to me, just, keep our old newspapers in a good place. I mean, I know that that's important, but, it seems like we can spend a little bit more money, or maybe quite a bit more, but at least have something that the public can enjoy versus just a building out there.
And I did speak to staff in terms of that idea, if we had some kind of just a large museum where the majority of our stuff was out, viewable for the public, but a lot of it needs to still be stored. It can't all be out. And an example that Caitlin, our curator, gave me was linens or fabrics, woven things. They can't be displayed year-round. They have to be stored probably at least half of the year, because if they're just out in light, they will deteriorate. So if we did both, a combination where we could maybe build a smaller storage facility, we could potentially go down the route of a larger museum where a lot of our products can be out, but we would still need to have some storage capacity to be able to rotate items in and out. You know, whether that cost is significantly higher than this number, I don't know. That's not something we haven't studied yet, but Shane's right, we have bantered that option around. Where that would go, I don't know. Off the top of my head, downtown, obviously, and I think the mayor has mentioned downtown would be a great place to have something like that. Where that property is, you know, I'm at a loss in terms of finding that, short of going out and trying to acquire land first.
How much does this affect your square footage, what you currently have? Is it like 3 times, 4 times?
So we are, the Art and Heritage Center is 1,400 square feet, and this would get us to 5,000. If you remember when we talked, the board said, tell us what you want and need for the future. We don't want you coming back in the near future saying I need, you know, extra. This would allow us to get to 5,000, which, you know, close to 4 times, at least 3.5. With the ability to potentially expand based on how we would build that structure. We could double it if we needed to. The one I talked about before was Longmont's. Theirs is 10,000 square feet. We obviously don't have that big of a community yet. We don't have all those items yet, so we didn't need 10,000, so we cut it back to 5. But that's still lots of growth room for us.
Thanks.
Any more questions on that one? Okay. Next one is, this is year 2 of 4 rooftop units on the old recreation center. We just replaced one of them. This is year number 2, so this would be a recurring item that you would see on the rec center. This is the final year. It's being under construction right now, the Windsor High School pool. The board agreed to pay three annual payments of $300,000 towards their $2.6 million school pool renovation. So this will be the last of those.
Eric, will we still get 35% of the use like before, and that's what we're contributing?
They've told us that we will continue to get the use that we've had. As I expressed back then, my concern is the school district is growing just as fast, if not faster, than the town, and ultimately my gut says we're probably going to begin to see declined use of that. If you remember the conversations back then when we agreed to this, that pool was built in 1970 or 72, so it had seen its useful life many times over, and we've been using it for free. So I can understand the helping out this time around, but unfortunately it won't shock me if in 3 to 5 years or sooner I wouldn't say out, but we see decreased use. We don't get to use it. Our only use right now is in the mornings, early mornings. We're not using it after 4 o'clock, that kind of thing. So it's a difficult thing because we didn't pay for anything for many, many years, but at the same time, you know, $900,000 is a lot of money. So. Trails and open space. This one here is the Poudre Trail on the left, $105,000. That is broken out into 2 different items. There's a $30,000 Water Valley Poudre Trail repair. That is the piece that's to the farthest east point of Water Valley subdivisions and adjacent to 257 on the western side of 257. If you've ridden that part of the trail, make sure you're not sitting on your bike seat because it'll probably give your back some jolts because the trail's doing some heaving there, so that's fixing that. And if you remember last year actually a year and a half ago, when the Poudre Trail collapsed, we talked about, and Greeley has done this, Weld County has done this, and Windsor did it. You know, we had this major flooding and lost portions of the trail, and we hadn't earmarked any money for large trail repairs. So we did this last year, added $75,000, and I can tell you that we've spent it and actually probably saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. You remember we've made a trail bank river repair earlier this summer. If it wasn't for that and we had another strong snow melt this next year, we probably would be looking at a $400,000 or $500,000 repair there. So we're able to do that piece. And so this really is an earmark of $75,000 that we would be able to use if we identify something maybe after the 2019 spring melt that says, oh, we need to repair this portion of the trail. So it doesn't mean that we would spend that $75,000, but it's there in case we need it, short of coming back to the board and say, hey, we need X. There's always pieces of the trail that are getting encroached by the river, or other projects that come up that we could spend if we needed to. But it really is an earmarked amount of money for a major trail repair if it's needed. Number 2, ditch trail. This is something we're continuing to do, and ultimately we're working with Ian and the landowner to try to amicably acquire easement to basically take the number 2 ditch trail from behind Grandview School down to High Hops, and then along 392 over to 13. There's one landowner over there that we're struggling with. We've been dealing with him for a couple of years now, and we're at that point of it's time for us to move this along one way or the other. So that's coming. So that's part of what the funding that is in there for. And right now we're actually doing some design plans so that we're prepared, i.e. shovel ready, when the time comes.
Eric, what is CTF?
Conservation Trust Fund.
So it's part of the lottery money?
Yes.
So when you buy a lottery ticket, some of it goes to people who are actually playing the lottery. The other about 50% of it is split up between Great Outdoors Colorado and the Conservation Trust Funds. And some goes to parks and the state parks and wildlife as well. So the CTF is a direct contribution to the town based on our population. It's an annual appropriation, and we need to use up 100% of it on parks, open space, trails. So
good.
It's completely earmarked for that.
Great. Thank you.
Eric?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So it's gonna come in front of High Hops, right down 392 to 13? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it will not follow the number 2 ditch.
Okay,
at that
gotcha.
point.
And then what's the plan after 13? Are we still?
You'll see that in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, patience, please.
Wrong way. So the next piece on the next slide is, so what we were just talking about, where's the box here? The easement we're talking about was to come right down here to 392, jump over onto our property. And so we've earmarked $1 million to take the trail from this point, put a little parking lot there, basically follow the lake and get it to this point. So what would be left is that easement piece and that construction to the east, and then from here to River Bluffs, which is right there. This is our number 2 trail priority. Number 1 being coming down off of the hill in some form down to the Pooter Trail. This is number 2. The earlier discussion was there any plans or designs or estimates done previously? Right. There were. It was $5 million, what, a year and a half ago? A year and a half ago, it's $5 million to come off the top of the hill down. So we don't have that kind of money. What we feel like the best use of this fund is to take this money and build this portion on our property. We already control the land. We can put the trail there. And so we're only missing 2 small pieces from here over past High Hops to the number 2, and from here to River Bluffs. This piece, and why it's so critical, is we are almost able to loop the entire community with a trail. And so this is number 2, but we really have a shovel-ready project. Let's go ahead and get this done. The one caveat to this is we will have basically tapped this fund, the Laramie County Open Space Fund. So I want to say off the top of my head, the funds are something like 1.1 million balance. This is the major project there unless we wait for the $5 million project. So in staff's terms, this is the best use of the money to do it now and get this built. Yes.
So at our strategic planning, we talk about buffers and open space a lot. Do these bunkers or this trail affect this being open space?
I don't think it affects it. I think
my point is, I don't think everything has to be programmed. I think this is such a great piece of property right by the river. There's wildlife there. I would hate to see
It is.
that disrupt. There's no buffer between Loveland. This is kind of the buffer after you get into town.
And we've talked about not programming the lake, potentially. I don't think we would ever program this corner down here where we spent $2 million for the pump house and the input and output of the water there. So we're really only talking about what's programmable, if anything. And again, it's really biking and walking, which I would classify as passive recreation, not active. So you're really only talking about this portion here. And if I'm, Ian, you correct me if I'm wrong, if you're still here, this is a future potential oil and gas well site. So I don't see a lot happening there unless we came back to the board and said, hey, can we start using the water for some kind of recreation? So I still think it maintains the integrity of what you're talking about, which is open space and buffer.
Is there any way to memorialize that, or is that just up to the whim of the next board? I mean, we designate open space in the town, and it's managed by Mr. Willis.
I think.
I mean, if we let this become something, we'll never get. It seems like low-hanging fruit for open space. So if you're telling me the bunkers and the trail, keep it as open space, I'm okay with that.
I don't see why we couldn't do that. The only question I could see in the future coming would be if folks want to use the water. And I say that in your strategic plan, what I heard at the tables that I was at, what people wanted more water recreation. And you'll see that later tonight in terms of programming Windsor Lake. But the public immediately jumps to what other water can we program? You've got the Kiger and you have the Poudre River and Windsor Lake. So if we're trying to base our decisions on the strategic plan, and again, and you're right, in the strategic plan is buffers and open space, I can tell you that I heard in terms of open space and trails and recreation, people commented about water and wanting more water type of recreation, whether that was fishing or boating or bird watching or whatever. So ultimately, I think that's a decision, for the board to make.
My point is to program this and then go spend $1 million or $2 million on a piece of land so we can build up our open space. Seems counterproductive when we have something that we already own that we can maintain as open space. Because those comments from the public were, tons of people talked about open space. Forget the trails, and we even talked about buffers
And that's why I think that the trail on this end allows some use, but I just see no reason why we would ever use this back corridor because of the very critical infrastructure that we've put in there. So if you're almost creating a third of the property. So maybe you program this third, the middle is the water, and for lack of a better term in the moment of today, is that up for discussion in the future? And then this lower third or western third is off limits because of what's already there.
Hey, Eric, I want to strongly support Miles's point. I think we have a really natural open space there. My understanding is we might use this water to backfill Windsor Lake at times. We had almost 100 people at our strategic planning thing, which is far less than even 1% of our public. And we did hear a lot of people, and we still hear it every day, about the need for open space, especially this is one of our gateways coming into town. So we have a really natural opportunity here for open space, some wildlife. And so I just want to really emphasize strongly what Miles, the point that he was bringing up, we want to leave this as natural and unmanaged as possible from a maintenance standpoint, as well as aesthetics and wildlife and open space.
I have a question about the $5 million project. Is that coming down from like Highland Meadows area, County Road 5 area, all the way down?
That was coming down, and Wade, you correct me if I'm wrong, it was coming down Highland Meadows, crossing 392, coming east on 392, and then cutting through I forget what the road is going east or north and south. County Road 3. Yeah. And the reason for the cost is there's a lot of switchbacks that are needed, and that was what ran the cost up. It doesn't seem like it, but when in terms of grade of the trail, it was very expensive.
Yeah, I know that area. I guess my other question would be, instead of that being a $5 million project, could it be broken off into sections? And we try to accomplish it over time? I don't know if we're ever gonna come across, $5 million in our couch cushions to.
We could, but I think when you compare that $5 million project and this connection, we are super close to being done with number 2 priority. If we spend $1 million over here, and let's say that it takes 5 years of $1 million each, we'll be done with this project in a couple of years because there'll be some funding for those other portions. There's not a $5 million bucket we can reach into.
Yeah, because there's not to get too much in the weeds here, I'm sorry, but, they're gonna put PSD's gonna put a new elementary school in Highland Meadows, and then the communities on County Road 13 will eventually have to link into there. In driving, it's, over 4 miles, where trail would be 1 mile or less.
And maybe there's a
So-
way I know some of the development over by 5, maybe we can go that direction and hook up to what will be the future Pooter Trail going down County Road 5 through that subdivision over there is a possibility. But if we try to come down over the hill, it will be expensive.
I strongly agree that the Kiger, the Ditch 2 trail is really critical, and excited to get that moving and almost done. The West Trail, $5 million, I heard that a couple of years ago, and I didn't know where we were, if that was an updated figure, if we've updated or changed the engineering design.
No, that is not an
If there's
update.
other options. Obviously, that's a big hit for any one time. So this might be our future discussion as we get into budget, but I would be strongly in favor of earmarking a certain percentage of our annual budgets from whatever into a fund and build that up over time. That's a big project, and it's gonna be a big hit at one time, but if we start building up the funds to eventually do it, I'd be strongly in favor of that.
Good.
Eric, just to make sure I understand, I think what you said is on that southeast corner of this, where the trail is, the number 2 canal trail would connect there at that point?
It would parallel 392 all the way to High Hops.
Right.
Then go up 17th Street.
And ultimately go across here and then across to the
Correct.
River Bluffs?
Correct. And the ideal way is to follow the number 2 and they come in right down here, but the landowner is
Won't play.
absolute no there. This is the next best route.
Yeah, I
Plus
think-
it goes right by several businesses.
Because trail connectivity was also a big issue.
Yeah.
I think that looks nice. I think.
So I'm just looking at, we got 4 or 5 neighborhoods. We got Jacoby, we got Greenspire, we got New Windsor. They could all come down 15th, 392
Correct.
and connect.
And the other thing that does for those neighborhoods on the north side of Main Street is, and I get that it's a roundabout way.
Right.
But it connects them to the south side of the Pooter Trail.
It does,
It gets them
yes.
safely without going through any major intersections
Right.
to the south side of the town. Now, again, a
It's
roundabout
an
way.
on-street trail,
Correct.
but we have a lane there, I think, at least
Right.
on Main Street, on 392, we don't on 15th.
We don't on,
I don't think we do
we
on
don't on
5th
17th.
or 17th.
Yeah, so
I
we
agree.
would put one there on 17th.
Yeah.
And then,
So you
so
can
that
connect
little
at least
stretch.
3 neighborhoods pretty easily to that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna pile on.
Go for it.
I've been on the board 6 years. This is not a criticism of the staff. We have gotten nowhere on that trail. I know we have pricing,
Right.
but I don't even see it. It's in long-term. Why can't we at least get a design, get plans? We're spending $750,000 on designing of a road that we don't even know when it will get.
We could
enhanced.
definitely we could get
I
designs.
just feel like there's been no progress. No criticism.
No,
I know stuff has tried to happen, and
But
maybe
I
it's
don't-
our fault.
I don't know that, because I don't know that it's had the consensus of the
That's-
board to
that's
want to
not-
make that a priority. It certainly, at that cost, it has not been a priority of
But-
this board to, so it's not necessarily them, because I think the board has kind of driven that conversation because of the price tag. There are other things that have risen to the top that seem to make more.
Totally agree. We haven't given that kind of direction. This will never rise to the top unless this board makes it a priority. We have a whole segment of the
Well, that's
town
what- but- and
that
I-
doesn't get to go
I'm
on the
still
trail.
not
They have
willing
no
to make it a
connectivity.
priority if it's
There's no
gonna cost
connection to the
$5 million.
businesses. I think we need to at least see some movement. Mr. Bennett suggested saving money every year. That would be movement. Maybe a different plan
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah, 'cause
switchbacks all the way
I would not be in
down.
favor of any plan that's $5 million for a trail, just because we have to have connectivity. I think we have to continue to kind of maybe look at other potential possibilities to bring that cost down.
And not to jump slides, but I think this conversation lends itself to the next slide in what Mr.
So I can
Bennett
repeat
said.
myself next time.
So on the left, the slide on the right goes to the discussion you all were just having. So please, for a moment, ignore the picture. The slide on the left is $1 million earmark for trail property acquisition that I can't discuss in terms of the location, but can't discuss in this moment the location. But know that as soon as I-25 is expanded, we will have the ability to take the Poudre Trail from its ending point at River Bluffs with a variety of other municipalities and other players that aren't in the room tonight, to go from that point at River Bluffs over to Harmony and connect to Fort Collins. So then Fort Collins is connected all the way through Windsor to Greeley. So I've earmarked some money there for acquisition, and it could be less, it could be more, and if it's more, we go to some other folks if need be. But so acquisition of that property so that we can make that connection. The piece on the right, the picture, is the Sureview property, and this is way to my right. This is right here. Where's 257? Right here. Right here. 257 splits this property. And the map actually is incorrect that I drew. It should come out here all the way to Missile Silo Park. We've talked about community buffers and open space. So 257's right here, going over to 34 this direction, going back towards Crossroads in this direction. Greeley has told us, and Wade confirmed this today, for 2020, they're setting aside $2.5 million. If this fall, their open space, what is it called? Quality of life tax passes again, if it's renewed, they're gonna make that $5 million. We are in negotiations right now with Greeley and that landowner to make this open space that's co-owned or shared with Greeley and Windsor. The point I'm making to you tonight is, and this property acquisition is not in the 19 budget, it is in the 21 budget of $3 million, knowing that Greeley's setting aside 5 if we set aside 3. To your point, we don't have that money. There's no pot sitting over here for us to go, hey, we need $5 million for the trail down over the hill, or we need $3 million for this, or anything else that we've identified. So we need to come up with some kind of either funding mechanism that we get funds from developers, residents, or we determine that there's some other piece of the pie somewhere that we can begin to create that war chest so that, again, to your strategic plan, if we want to acquire open space and buffers or build out our trail system to the vibrant one that we've all talked about, we need a war chest of funds. How can we create that? And so I'll be glad to go back to that other discussion, but I think these two are basically the same discussion. And we're trying to, in the previous slide, trying to identify the ones that we feel like we can get done with the money we have today. But I can tell you, those two right there are big numbers in terms of trail and open space acquisition and building that we don't have the funds sitting there today. If you said, go do this, I'd ask you for the money because I don't know where it's going to come from. So I think it's a bigger conversation, but one we definitely need to have. Any questions on if you want to go back or these two items here? Again, the one on the right is, we've pushed that to 2021 for us, knowing that Greeley's doing something in 20. The one on the left is more critical in terms of getting some property now so that when the time comes to build that connector from River Bluffs to Harmony Road, that we have the ability to do that. And I will tell you that the property there is the critical linchpin in the connector.
So in this budget, you've got $1 million for this connector that you can't tell us about exactly?
I can't tonight. I'd be glad to tell you in an executive session.
Which may happen.
May happen soon.
In the near future.
Like, all I can tell you is we're working on it.
I gotta make a comment though. I mean, I love studying history. I value the historical things we have stored at the Arts and Heritage Center. But we're spending $1.7 million to house things from the past.
Mhm.
Part of me, yeah, and I don't see things as either or. Like Mr. Baker said, that's a lot of money. 1.7 million, that's a pretty big house. Yeah, we're struggling to find money for connectivity for the people who are living today. So somehow, I don't want to just say we can't do $5 million, and I appreciate what Madam Mayor is saying too. I want us to continue looking at options and ways to further connectivity, especially the west end, to the Poudre Trail. There's got to be some other things we haven't thought of or some opportunities. I don't want us to give up on that.
There could be safe route to schools.
Yeah.
There could be Larimer County grants for trails.
Yeah.
The NPO has trail money.
I don't think that, I think there's opportunities to find monies. Just know that I believe that staff has looked at the three most viable options, and the cheapest route was the 5 million. Now, can those numbers change? One of the routes was to come down over the hill on the south side, but there's a lot of property acquisition and easements, and those folks don't want users going through there. The other route was to go along County Road 5 and connect down there. And then the one was to come down 392. So I feel like we've looked at those, and we'd be more than happy if the board wants us to get back into that, but I think those three options are the best options. All of them will be expensive.
Or one lane down 390. The issue is the hill.
It's the hill. It's not the road.
One lane
it's the
down.
hill.
If you want to get back, you can take another route. I mean, okay, I mean, there's, or if someone builds a gondola, you know, you take the gondola. Okay.
So, any
Don't
questions
give up
on?
is the message.
I'm sorry.
Can we get back to this Poudre Trail acquisition?
Yes.
Now, you're talking from the trailhead there on Jacoby Road up to Timothy.
To Timothy, yes.
Okay. And why would we be borrowing, is that the total cost, or is that a cost share, or is there more?
Don't know that yet in negotiations.
Okay, but why isn't the Poudre Trail in Larimer County and
They are.
Timnath and?
They are.
Okay, but that would be just our share,
This
or
is
that would be the total
yeah,
share?
this is just our share of a little small sliver.
Okay, and again, this isn't, this is just an estimate number, we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
We're
it's just
just
a
starting
placeholder.
negotiations.
I put a number in there to make sure that if we needed to get to that number, we could.
Yeah, I mean, it could be substantially less than that for our share.
Correct.
It could be more, we don't know, but I do know that the Poudre Trail and this connection, long-term for this community and this board is, you know, as high of a priority as we can have on anything, so we didn't want to sell it short from the budgetary standpoint. But yeah, it would go through all the same things we do with the Poudre Trail.
Right.
And wouldn't that be prime for a GOCO grant as
Absolutely.
well?
I would argue that when we go to build, that is the #1 project in the state, hands down. All right, community parks, we talked about this one in the past, Diamond Valley. So this money was 3.6 million, it was earmarked for this year. I'll be quite honest with you, I've not had the ability, the time to get to it. We're just now starting that project. This would build a multi-purpose 600 by 600 field, fully lit, road system throughout, not counting this field here. And this is the location that we've been talking about building the parks maintenance site and the museum storage facility. Just now, basically getting this off the ground, but I did bump the costs from 3.6 to 4.1, just based on the construction cost changes that we have seen. So, any questions on this one?
Eric, can you show us how far east there the town-owned land goes?
We own about 100, see this line right here, all the way up?
That's
the
ditch,
John
and
Law
that's the
ditch. We
John
own
Law.
about 100 or to 150 feet this direction to the east.
Okay.
And what we don't own is this line here, south. So this area is not ours. There's about 9 acres right there. Okay?
Okay.
Next, so this is that property I was just showing you. We've gone out and asked kind of an overlay of what we could fit on that site. So this is the maintenance building. It's 20,000 square feet. We're currently in a 14,800 and some square foot building. This number over here is a little deceiving because there's about $1 million that the school district is going to pay us. So it's really $1 million less than that. But this is the maintenance facility. This is the storage facility, brush and recycling, yard, and then asphalt for parking for staff. Right there at the roundabout.
5.4, 6.4 includes the storage costs that we,
No.
no, that
No,
would
this-
be on top of it.
I showed
But
them.
that's part of this plan here,
It's part of the plan, but I showed them to you
Separate.
separately.
so that's in addition to
In addition
what
to,
we're looking at.
right. For example, if you chose to do one over the other, then, so they're separated, even though they would be on the same footprint site.
How many square foot do we have right now that are being kicked out?
14,800 and some change.
Okay.
And so again, when we talked, you said, don't come back 2 years later and say I'm short. So we went back and looked at the 2 studies that had been done, and the numbers were somewhere between 18 and 20,000 square feet to build out for, in terms of staff and need, and that's what we built to. This is just aerial shot of what it would look like. And then a view of the building. It's a very similar structure to what's at Public Works in terms of outside look. Very simple build, steel building with some designs work on the front.
So it's to the north of the current Public Works facility.
No, this is Diamond Valley.
Oh, this is.
I'm
if
just
we-
showing
oh,
you,
this is
yes.
If we put this all out.
Correct.
So again, yeah, we're looking at both options.
we're looking-
Maybe we
right.
go to
Gotcha.
the north. If it was at the Public Works facility, I think it would need to go, would it go west or north?
It could go west or north.
Yeah.
But it would be, if it was at that site, it would also get back into Terry's discussion on determining
Right.
what his future needs might be and whether we would go west or north.
Well,
depending
plus
on
the
that.
town's already ran fiber up to the Public Works facility and all that.
There is some advantages in terms of cost to put it out there. But remember that the Diamond Valley site will need park maintenance at build out anyway. Next one, this goes to some entrepreneurial ideas, continued expansion of water play at the lake. And ultimately, I am working with staff to try to get aquatics to become its own enterprise fund and not be dependent upon a general fund. We're going to work across all areas to get there in many places that we can, but aquatics is one. So what this would do basically is put a floating playground on Boardwalk Park. There is not one in Colorado. The closest one is in Nebraska this year, and there's one in Utah and one in Arizona. So it would be the only one of its kind in this state. We've done a small little business plan. We determined that by charging $18 for an hour use, which is typical across the United States, we could pay this off in about 4 years based upon 500 people using it a week for the 11 weeks it will be open. If it's more use than that, we pay it off faster. If it's less, obviously pay it off sooner. This has a 10-year lifespan. It'd be $165,000 initial investment. It's about $120 for the product itself, and then there's installation, and we have to buy a shipping container to store it in the winter and those kind of things. So I'll be glad to share the business plan with you if you'd like to see that. As you know, Boardwalk Park is extremely busy as we know it, but we don't make any money over there. We make a little bit of money on boat rentals. Concessions is, okay. This would create a true destination, and for the people that are there, they would spend some money. They'd spend time there. I think ultimately when you think about the incubator businesses, those become popular. Hopefully people spend more time in hotels. Hopefully they spend more time in our restaurants and our shops. So that is the Wibbit is what it's called. You're more than welcome to look them up on the internet. There's all kinds of different designs. You could get really fancy and spell Windsor. So if you flew over it with a helicopter, you could see our name. But it would, so if you were at the beach, it'd be just out and to the right beyond the swim beach area. We'd extend the dock out there, and it would be lifeguarded. So that's kind of my speech for doing this. It's something that staff's been looking at for a little over 2 years. We really think it will be a viable business product for the lake. So, any
You have
questions?
staffing costs of 43,000. That seems low. Is that
No,
is that
no,
realistic
it's-
or just a placeholder? Or?
no, that's not a placeholder.
I guess it's only the summertime.
Yeah, it's only 11 weeks. That's for 6 guards every day for 7 hours. So.
And every time he says whip it, I hear that Devo song, whip it real good. I think we need to have that playing on our soundtrack the whole time. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Renner.
What were you saying, Eric? Where were we,
I was asking if you move to approve.
So the 165, is that one as elaborate as the layout that we're seeing?
It's that product, right?
Oh, it is that
It is
product.
that product. Yes. And I'll be glad to, if you'd like some more information on this, to see better pictures, I can send you the whole brochure on that product. There's multiple ones in many states. Michigan just put 3 in their state parks last year. Nebraska just added one. They're in a variety of places.
Where exactly in the lake would it be? Would it be near the swimming
So
area?
if you know where the beach is at, and so you have the boat rental dock is on your left if you're looking out into the lake, and then there's a dock off to the right. It would be off that dock in that little cove. It wouldn't impact boating in any way. It's going to be off into that right little cove over there.
Would the wake from boats
No,
affect?
no more than what 100 people running on that at one time is going to do.
More fun.
They only have boats like 2 days a week or something.
But it holds
It's 3 or
120.
4, but.
What about insurance? It just falls under our.
We've actually talked to Sursa. It's only a few $100s. It's not a big change in the insurance.
Yeah, how deep the water is in about that location?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it has to be, I remember, I think it has to be 8 feet deep.
Water Valley put a similar kind of
They have the
play area.
Aquaglide, small version.
Right.
Yeah,
And
a couple pieces.
It broke its moorings in one of the high winds and
Mhm.
was out of pocket for a while. So mooring these down is
Absolutely.
not as easy as it looked. You can imagine the wind caught those. How in the heck did we live as kids without stuff like this?
Slip and slide.
Slip and slide.
I didn't live in the community that Eric built.
What?
No, I'm not kidding.
That's true.
I came from a DeVry.
That's true.
That's not a slam. I don't mean that is. When he first told me, hey, this would be a great, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be great. Especially if we can make money. I mean,
All right. There. Zoomed in
Oh.
a little bit. There you go. Forgot about that. So next one is the small, I believe this is the last one too, the small shelter at Main Park. This is adjacent to the playground. That shelter is very old, it's probably 20 years old. It's still usable. It's a little, needs a little TLC. But what I will tell you is the use of Main Park is going to go up as soon as that playground opens. Rentals, birthday parties, that kind of stuff. There's money to be made, not with that shelter. It needs to be a little bit bigger than that. So that's what this $100,000 is in there for. That shelter there really only holds one picnic table on either side. It needs to hold 4, 6, 8 picnic tables so that you can rent it. We're staff's looking into potentially renting our shelters more than one time a year even, or not a year, but one time a day. So again, because of the playground, I think it necessitates the need to replace this shelter. If we chose not to do that, we could obviously wait, but I think the demand will be there to rent, and we won't have the capacity, because that is literally 20 yards from that playground.
Would it make this shelter like some that are in our other parks, kind of more modern and stuff?
Yeah, it would be definitely a more modern look. Probably something similar to one of the other shelters at Main Park, but remember there's 2 there. If we did one of those there, that would obviously suffice.
What's the condition of the bathrooms at Main Park?
They are okay. They're about 20, I want to say 22, 25 years old. I think we have earmarked them to be replaced in the next 5 years. So. Any questions on this one? And last one is Village East Park. This one, the project came in $166,000 over budget. We think some of that is obviously construction costs have gone up, but we also were asking to get it done before Christmas of this year. And quite honestly, if we were to go in and cut anything out of that project, it's not going to be a very nice park. It would just be kind of beyond plain Jane, mostly grass. So what we've decided was to wait for about a month, go back out to bid, and with the deadline of spring, summer, I let them sod in the spring. What we've heard for some feedback from some construction firms was they didn't bid because of the deadline. So we've bumped the cost up to accommodate some of that, and then hopefully get better bids through the winter. And if we have good winter, whoever gets the job can be moving earth and that kind of thing all winter long. And then when spring and summer hits, they can sod and be done with the project.
What was bid this year for that?
We budgeted $866,000, and it was $166 over.
I guess keeping with Paul's question, is there bathrooms part of this?
There is not a bathroom. We do not put bathrooms in neighborhood parks. We assume that people are close enough that they can go home. Anything else? All right, thank you.
So you can see we have quite a busy year planned for next year. One thing that we have not included in this plan was the reverse osmosis plant. If it turns out we go that way, we'll have to make an adjustment to this plan. So in addition to the stuff that we talked about, we have what we call long-term projects.
So, I'm sorry, this may be out of order, but I have some questions on some other items that were in here that we didn't touch on.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So on the mill, the funding source was water, monthly user fees?
Oh, no, that was a mistake.
13?
We changed
Of
it,
the PDF that we got in our packet?
we changed it to the capital improvement fund.
Okay.
We caught that today.
And then, I think I had a question on this entry sign,
Yeah.
and let me try to find it. It was for the sewer impact fees, that was the funding source, that doesn't seem right either.
I think we would move that to the capital improvement
Okay,
fund.
so under
as well.
entryway signs to promote community events, the funding source was sewer impact fees.
Yeah, it was probably a typo.
Okay.
We'll change it to capital improvement
And
fund.
is that for 2 signs, $100,000?
I'm not sure how many it is for.
We're on a wayfinding project right now, so it's a placeholder because we don't know what the study and what kind of partnership there might be.
Okay, because there's two signs on the map, or 2 points.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Just sounds,
But there, this is transformed, it would be different.
just sounded pretty cheap for 2 signs.
Probably is.
I think that was it. That was it.
Okay.
And it's not a project, but I would hope in this year's budget, we have a transportation line item, because just like we were expected on the I-25 project to put in $1 million over 3 years, I would anticipate that, I mean, that's what they're telling us, that we can't anticipate if we want any major highway projects completed, and we are talking now about stuff on 257 and 392, that the expectation is that you're gonna have to put some money in, so I think it would be prudent for us to have at least a line item somewhere. We may not spend it, but, I mean, that's what they're telling us, that you're gonna have money in order to, to get looked at, so those of, I mean, you asked a question about what's gonna take for 392. We're gonna have some money that says, hey, we've got some share.
So is that for a regional project like widening I-25, or is this kind of in the town of Windsor project that we'll want to partner with?
It could be either or. Could be a project that's, something that's, like on 34, they're doing the Pell study. There could be something that comes out of that there might be a need or a request or something, I don't know. Could be though something more local, like the 257, 392 that we're talking about.
Okay, I was just making a note there. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, so in addition to the projects that we talked about, we have a list of projects here that we call long-term community projects. That's a nice way of saying we don't know when we know we want to do them. We're not sure what year or how we're going to pay for them entirely. All the ones we talked about so far, we have found a way to pay for. For instance, here in 2019, this is the all-in total spread amongst the funds. We talked about all these projects tonight. For 2019, you can see we have about $45.5 million planned for next year. Like I said, a busy year. So over the course of the entire plan, same slide, just talking about all the years together rather than just next year, the 133 million is what we have identified as when we'd like to do it and projects that are funded. So using what we know today, we think we can get these done in 5 years. That list I showed you before is outside of this cost here. That's stuff we still know we want to do. We just haven't quite figured out how and when to do it. Yes.
Dean, we carried these, on your earlier slides, you had numbers for sales tax receipts, capital improvement funds, et
Yes.
cetera, based on some assumptions about the surrounding economy or, quite frankly, the volume of growth and construction that would go on in the town. When you carried this out for 5-year capital, did you use your average number and just multiply times 5?
Yes.
So really, depending on the economic environment, it may not.
Maybe higher or lower, yeah, as it eventually turns out.
Right, well, and that's a good thing about, like with the capital program, because so much of it is severance taxes and but money that comes from one-time sources, if it doesn't materialize, we just have less money to put into the capital projects. So it's, while things are going good, we have plenty of money to put back into our roads and different things. And as it peters out, we just have a lot smaller number to go in to take the board for consideration for the out years capital projects.
Yeah, and I just sent you a comment, but what I'd hate to see is us get started on a multi-year construction project.
Right.
And then have the economy turn, funds change, and you're halfway through a building and there it sits. But I think we just have to dedicate that money as we enter that project, almost regardless of.
Right. Right, I know what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely.
to it, I think Shane said it really well, is if we don't have the money, we don't do the projects. But the good news is, what this is shows our beginning balance. What we're gonna collect each year, what we're gonna send, what we're proposing to spend in each year. The good news is that at the end of the 5 years, on the back page there, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, we still plan to have some money. So while it is a big expenditure, we are planning to do a lot. And again, to David's point, if everything comes true how we have it here, we will still have money. You can see the number above, the number on the back page, the number above that 38 number is this 133 number here that's on the screen now. So that's our total over 5 years. So there's a lot of numbers. This is a lot of information, but this is what we had planned. That one, this is one that we adjust, or I'm sorry, this is the one I was talking about, the back page here. So, that being said, any questions
So
or
again, the
additional
back page
items?
is the 5-year total.
Summary.
Yeah, summary. So that's why like sales tax is 16 million is, yeah.
Did you have anything you want to say?
No, I guess I would just say for the board, as you look at this, I guess my only discomfort with this budget when I first saw it was just how much reserve we're taking out of our capital improvement plan. I mean, we're basically gonna spend $18 million in carry forward, just 4.6 million. So this does have, money in reserve that we're pledging to spend, which is okay to do, but it's also a pretty big bite in that reserve. And so for me and my philosophy, I just think in no other place should the board have such a big impact on the budget than the capital budget. I mean, this is really all the things we've been talking about in strategic plan, things you guys have been talking about for years in these projects. So, staff didn't cut any of these things out. These are all here for you. But I would just point out that we're still going to be okay, but it is a pretty big year, as Dean pointed out, as far as it's a big year of capital stuff. And I just, kind of to Mr. Suslowski's point earlier, we're spending a lot of money next year. We're projecting to spend a lot, and so I have a little bit of unease. Just feel like, my God, this is a lot of money. So that's my comment. And so, but anyway, everything's being presented to you, and again, as a board, as you look at these projects and you say, based on that, I don't think this is as important. That's sort of your prerogative. Everything's been presented to you tonight. And I'm sorry, Mr. Baker, did you
I
have a
answered it
question?
myself.
Oh, good.
Pretty good, huh?
I guess, Shane, based on kind of what I was hinting at in terms of who knows forecasting the economic environment, I'm wondering if I could ask you to look at projects that are on your next year capital plan that are multi-year projects by definition, and take those as have to fund, and then kind of see how much we might have if in fact there's a 10% decrease in revenues or something like that.
Sure. And do you understand that, Dean? Or it's just,
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, well, that's what I have. Thank you for staying with us here. And I know it was a lot to absorb, but thank you. And
Thank you.
No, hard work, guys, I'm
Thank
sure.
you for putting this all together.
I want to make two comments. One, I just want to reemphasize what I said earlier, and what Christie said earlier too, about when some of these long-term big projects, we ought to look at our budget about earmarking, building up funds over time for whether it be transportation or trails, whatever we prioritize. And I just really want to tell you how much I appreciate staff too. We take a lot of things for granted. I turn the faucets at home, the water works, and I can drive on the streets. And so, not just the work that went on this, but the work that you all do every day that keeps things going in our community. It's a lot. So just appreciate all this.
Well, thank you. I think I speak for everyone in saying thank you for noticing. But no, thanks, and thank you again. I feel we're pretty lucky here because we have a lot of ideas that projects we want to do.
Yes.
And the even better part is we have money to pay for them. So, you know, I've worked on the other end of that fence as well, and this is much better. So.
Well, I'd like to say that I like that, I think it makes our job easier when we can look at forward-thinking projects versus we have a $20 million of problems we need to fix in this town or something like that versus we can be forward-thinking as far as quality of life, really is what all this boils down to, so. I'm grateful for the people that have come before us that have kind of set the precedence for where we're at right now. So.
Okay,
All right.
thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Future town board meetings, anything we need to?
There's nothing, I think I covered it at our last work session. Yes?
Well, yeah, I was gonna bring up Harvest Fest too, because the sooner you can send out, the time period that we need to be available, for that weekend. Also, I walked the parade route today. There are 14 blocks that we cover. So what we had talked about this year is I anticipate we will have 14 bags or designations of candy because we are gonna designate it by block so that we do every block and so I
So you
did.
don't run out.
Shane, don't laugh, this is important.
No, because every year we
Kelly?
have the last 2 blocks or the last block that gets jilted every time.
14 boxes of candy. You heard it
And
from the
there'll
mayor.
be one-
You heard it from the mayor.
Well, or whatever, or bags or whatever, but when that's done, we're done with that block.
Each person has 30 pounds?
But I want it specifically, we do want it designated so that there is a block 14
Shane doesn't know the history here.
is
This
gonna
is
get their
important.
candy this year, and block 13 is gonna get their candy this year. I don't wanna hear or see all those sad faces at the end that are looking at us like, again?
Last week, Eric came into the office and you hear the wrapper open. And Kelly dropped from the ceiling, "Don't eat that candy, that's for the kids." She's,
Were you taking from the kids?
It's candy. Miles brought the candy back.
Okay, well, thank you.
I got some at the end. You argued for candy
Okay,
last
is that
year. I
it?
didn't do it. It was-
Okay, thank you, everybody. Are we gonna be able to use your police truck again, chief?
You want it short.